Here you go. Good?
That's a big fish.
Full hand on tail. Yeah, looks sick. Good deal.
Look how broad that thing is.
I wonder if that was the one that pulled me in.
Beautiful. Oh my. That's a big
That's a
fish.
big fish, dude.
Limp.
This would have been waiting for all day.
That's over 6.
Felt that bite.
Damn, I think low and slow is the way to go, eh, baby?
First big of the year on.
The thing I'm about to tie on.
Get him, get him.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Calm down. Come here, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here.
Yeah, dude!
Dude.
Pound 11 ounces.
Oh my god, please get the net. Please, 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 please get the net.
I got you, buddy. Oh my god. I got you.
That was the weirdest bite ever.
Oop.
That was a good one? Yep.
Sure, feels like it.
Sure is.
I can't turn her head, bud. Holy shit. What the? Is that another 6?
Could be.
The second giant of the day, proving that point. Oh my god! Oh my god! Yes! Big baits, big fish. There we go, 5 pounds, 6 ounces. Beauty! Let's go. Got him. Get in here, you. There's another 6. You! That's a big fish.
6'10". Woo-hoo-hoo. A little fatty.
Oh my god.
If I can land this fish.
Holy sh! 5.06. She's sick. Oh my god! Oh my god! Holy sh! God. What a beast. Dude, that's it, that's it. I'm 4 pounds smaller. I need a picture. Sorry.
Oh wow. That might be a 4. That might be a 4.
Yeah, it's a 4. You're gonna show that off too. 4 pounds, 12 ounces. Holy. Trailers, what's getting it done? Yeah?
Yeah.
Dude, that's unbelievable. That's a 4.
He's still swimming.
There we go. That's a big fish. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes! 414 though. Gee. Not too shabby. Boy. Oh boy, I'm way behind. Sorry everybody, we were talking. We were having a nice chat. How's everybody doing tonight? Audio check too, make sure that I have the right, I double checked. But it doesn't hurt to triple check, right? So let me make sure that the audio is good. How is everybody doing tonight? It's Thursday, not Wednesday. Had to break things up a little bit because I was traveling for work. And I was up very early to very late, as has been the norm for all of my work travel, which is fine. It's just busy. And I wanted to stream Wednesday. I was like, that's not going to happen. So hence Thursday stream. Who do we have in the chat before we get into it? Gordy, Mike, Kyle, MD, Kevin, Mr. Higgs, David, Mark, MD, Guggen Slayer.
Massive waffle coming soon.
Wait, what? Who said that? Oh, MD. Ooh.
I don't even know what that means.
Raffle. But you can't say raffle on Facebook and stuff because then everything gets flagged for gambling or whatever.
I took it as an actual waffle.
I know. Well, are you disappointed?
Yeah.
You want me to get my waffle maker?
I would much prefer a waffle over a raffle.
That'd actually be kind of funny if we actually had like a waffle one night and we're literally making waffles while waffling things. I could do that. I have a waffle maker upstairs. I'm just going to do that randomly. It's going to happen sometime like the next few weeks when Andrew comes back on, because I'll literally make waffles for Andrew and he'll just sit there and like chow down and we'll waffle out baits or rods or something. Who else I missed? Danny and Jason, Mr. Crazy Hick himself, and Guggen Slayer. Andrew gained some weight.
Hurtful. Hurtful. That hurts me. I think Andrew is just skinny and I'm normal. That's the way I like to think about it.
Yeah, Andrew's a toothpick. Andrew's always been a toothpick. Yeah. Oh, Guggen Slayer, crushed my candlewood yesterday. Nice. Congrats, man. Well, before we get into it, anyway, I'm joined by Dennis, who I think this is your third or fourth time you've been on the show.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. I think it is the third, though. But we're going to talk about gear tonight. This is something that, like, I get a lot of questions about everything all the time. And one of the things that's been coming up a lot lately is like, hey, man, I want to get into jigs. What do you recommend for a rod, reel, line, etc.? Jackhammers, what do you use? When you're throwing the open water sniper, like, what's your go-to? And like, that's a much more loaded question because it totally depends on time of the year and the weight that I'm using, whether I'm going to go casting or spinning. And we did do a show like this a little over a year ago, maybe like a year and a half ago. So I felt, you know what? The time is ripe to do it again, and especially that now we have a bunch of Douglas rods in the mix. We can talk about that. So just seemed like a good time to get this done, especially in, working around ICAST too with a bunch of more new rods being dropped, not only from Douglas. They got a new line of rods, another like an entry-level line of rods that are dropping. But, like everybody else out there, Shimano, Daiwa, I think even Megabass, like they all had new rods that they're dropping, new series or just like new models that they're dropped at ICAST. Actually, so I was at ICAST the Wednesday, yesterday, the first day the floor opened. And I was literally the first one down the escalator when the doors opened. Like I was
impressive.
Dude, I was jacked up.
That's impressive.
I just got lucky. I positioned myself and people kept like kind of squaring up and I just kept like, I'm taller than like the vast majority of people. So I just like kind of just threw my shoulders from like, get the fuck out of my way.
Block out a bunch of kids to get in first.
There was like no kids there. But no, yeah, I was like, I made my presence known. I'm like, no, I'm the first one in. And I was. I ran right by like there's a guy filming like the wave coming in because of the main entrance. I blew right by him. I was like, do I wait? Could I be in the video? Nope, I'm going in. I was way too excited. But the point I was trying to make was I was walking in. I was there for about a half an hour, and I found myself near the Daiwa booth. Right at the same time, they were doing like their kind of big like release. So like literally all of the Daiwa pros, BBT, MLF, elites, like they were all there. Around, I don't know who he was, if he's like marketing guy or president or whatever, but they were like, showcasing some of their biggest new releases that they were launching at that very moment.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was
Reels, all reels.
Yeah, no, rods, reels, lures. I think some new tackle cases I saw, but like they had this crazy digital saltwater reel, like like an actual like an electric one,
like a deep drop,
dude.
Yeah,
big honking reel, but with that Daiwa sexiness to it. It was like, I have no use for that, but it looks cool.
Yeah, take the skeeter offshore.
Right? So it was cool. But I will actually, you know what, we can elaborate a little bit on ICAST before we get into the show. And think about this. When we get into the heart of the topic, I won't take too long talking about God damn it, Mike. I won't take too long digressing about we'll do like 3 minutes for open water fishing report from this past weekend, and then talking about ICAST for like maybe 10 minutes, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the discussion. I'm gonna pin this just because it's funny. Finally put a hat on. Do you know how many people like message me on Instagram like, bro, where's your hat? Bro, you look weird without a hat. Dude, put a hat on. I'm like,
I'm at
come
work.
on. 38 with the hair of a 50-year-old. It pisses me off.
I feel it.
So like by the time we were all done with everything, Wednesday night, I was beat. I was dead tired. And we went out for sushi. So I was like full on some really good food. And I went up, called my wife. I was getting ready to go to bed. It was like 10:30. And I was like, I honestly kind of feel like going out and making a couple of Instagram stories just so I could put my freaking hat on. And she's like, you should. I was like, okay.
That's when you know it's real. When your wife tells you, like, yeah, you probably should.
She gave me the truth of it. And she's like, yeah, just go do it. I was like, all right. So I just did, 2 55-second recaps of what we did for the last few days. But it was good. I was, for anybody that didn't see, like, literally any other posts that I talked about, I was down there for my job, my real job, my full-time career. I am a sales engineer for, I think everybody, you know what? I'm not going to say it. I don't think my company's going to, I know they're not going to care, but at the same time, like.
You're a sales engineer.
I'm a sales engineer. It's no secret if you know where I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about it. Anyway, we were down there specifically for a visit with someone special. And it was kind of like double dipping because we will very likely be there in some capacity next year. There's quite a few people I worked with, like my boss and our director of marketing, like a bunch of people that have been there, but not for several years. So it was kind of like a primarily customer visit, and then go walk the show, get a feel for like, okay, like how is it? Like what's the layout, what to expect, and then we can kind of keep that in our mind for as we are there next year. So I should be back next year because I'm the product owner on this new thing we're doing that we met with the customer for. So I don't know. I cannot begin to express my gratitude for the opportunity to go down to that, and it was cool, and I had a blast. Fishing report. You fished this past weekend?
Yes, Friday.
Friday?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I feel like I remember. Did you go out with somebody or you were solo?
I went out with so I had a family vacation last week in Bar Harbor.
Oh
yeah.
Was it the Friday before that you went out with Andrew?
Friday before that, I went out with Andrew.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so
I went out. Yeah. So the past 2 weeks, the weekend before my trip, I was gone last week. Weekend before that trip, I went to 2 different ponds, and I caught, or combined, the 2 people in my boat caught 48 bass one day and 52 bass the other day. So we got a total of exactly 100 fish
nice
for the weekend. That was pretty good. But then I was at Bar Harbor. We stayed on Green Lake. I don't mind saying the name because, you know, if you want to go fish Green Lake, you go fish Green Lake because you have at it.
Not that good.
No, but it was basically, it's a lake trout salmon lake that's up near Bar Harbor, like way up there, and it was a family vacation, so I could only go out for like an hour or 2 at a time, so like couldn't really break down anything. And it's one of those places where you pull up on a point and it's like, if this was Winnipesaukee, I'd catch 12 bass off of this point. But there, you have to go through 12 of those points to catch 1 bass. Because it's just like the population was low. Every fish that you'd catch would be like really long and skinny. And it's like, there's just not a lot of life in the lake. We were swimming around in the lake and stuff too. And it's like, there just isn't that much in there.
Did you bring some stamps with you for all those envelopes you caught?
Yeah. It was not the most fruitful of, it wasn't intended to be a fishing vacation. It was like, I'm going to go while I'm there. And it's like, I think in the probably 4 hours total that I spent fishing throughout the week, I might have caught like 8 bass. So it's,
oof.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
not the best, most fruitful time, but it wasn't intended to be. So
yeah,
we didn't pick that because of bass fishing. It was just, we happened to be on a lake.
There you go.
Yeah.
So for our part, for Andrew and I, we did go out Sunday. We were in southern New Hampshire, went to a smallmouth only lake. If memory serves correct, the water surface temp was 76. And it's a pretty big, deep, clear lake. So again, smallmouth only, there's trout in there. I did catch a beautiful rainbow trout, which the picture did not like do this fish any justice. It was blue. Like we pulled it up and we both were like hard pause. Wait a minute. So we thought it was a salmon.
Are there salmon in there?
No. We legitimately thought it was a salmon because it was so blue. And then it kind of kicked around the boat for a little bit. And it was weird. Like it seemed like the fish settled. And then that natural, kind of pinkish, rainbowy green came out of it. But it was still very much blue. But I want to say we actually probably caught like 45 to 50 smallmouth. But 25 of those were like 8 inches or smaller. So we had to go through a lot of rats. Anytime we got up close to the bank, it was all rats. And the moment we got out to like 20, 25 feet, that's where all of our quality came from. And that was one of those instances where I could see a lot of people like struggling. And I know we ran into that the weekend prior where we caught, what we catch? Like 35 and then 40 and then 50 or 60, whatever the hell it was, or 56. And it just got better and better that 4th of July weekend. But we were offshore the whole time. And everybody we talked to, we watched them beating the bank the whole day. Ran into them at some point. How you doing? It's just terrible. We're not really sure what's going on. And we didn't say anything because there was a small body of water. We wanted the offshore stuff to ourselves. We're like, oh, that's unfortunate. And we just went back out offshore and crushed them. Yeah. Same thing. And it's sorry, let me circle back to reiterate the entire point. I can see where this is that confusing time of the year where people will go and beat the crap out of the bank and be like, oh, damn, like it really wasn't that good. And it's easy to do that because you're going to crush a ton of fish. And like literally almost every time we got up on the bank, I would catch this little squeaker. And it was like automatic. And I'd point the forward, active target out and you just see them, like just tons and tons of them roaming. So it's hard to peel yourself away from that and like keep going through like, oh, eventually it's got to be a bigger fish, right? And after like the first 15 fish of that, and the quality hadn't gone up, I was like, okay. And Andrew was like, we got to look deeper. So we started going out 20 plus feet, and in that like in the morning it was like 10 to 15 to maybe 20 feet. And it was like from a flat to a sharp breaking point. You could literally see them right where it broke.
Yep.
They were hanging right there.
Yep.
For the first half of the day. And the second half of the day, they moved out off of that. So if you get a nice longer, more mellow tapered out of that depth, that was much more consistent versus those sharp drops.
That's interesting.
Very. But it was like clockwork. As soon as like we saw that shift in where the bigger fish preferred to be, we waxed them. We just went out there and crushed them. It was definitely easier with the active target because we already knew what we were doing and already looking for. And then you pan around, you can see them, and we're another day to really work on that, specifically targeting roaming singular fish. And that's how we got some of our biggest fish. So it's good. Like I feel I've got that on lockdown. But again, water temp was 76. It's very smelt and yellow perch heavy in this particular location. Drop shot ruled the morning. And then we switched to the slow flow from Beast Coast Fishing in Alewife because it's very similar to a smelt. And just swimming that on a 3/16 ounce Kitech ball jig was killing it. And then throwing even that on a drop shot was working great. And that was pretty much it. Okay, that's a lie. There was one more thing, but I'm not going to tell you about it because I'm really happy with what I found with this. And I'm positive it's going to do really well in a couple of key areas on Champlain coming up at the end of the month.
Yep.
For that BFL.
Yep.
So for anybody going out this weekend, be prepared to start looking deeper if you're going for smallmouth because they are definitely pushing into that summer pattern hard. They went from spawn to like, okay, let's go deep in the blink of an eye. So get off the bank and start looking from out deeper, especially if it's an area you have that.
I think largemouth too. I mean, like even some of like the ponds that I went to, one of the ponds, that I went to, it's whole thing is shallow, does not get very deep. It's all largemouth. But even there, like you fish around the things that that everybody who launches a boat there is fishing that same stuff. Yep. And it's like, you're going to catch fish and you're going to get some of the little 8-10 inch fish, 6-8-10 inch fish. But then once you get away from that and you start to fish the more, I guess, lesser obvious spots, like the more subtle things, like the grass that maybe doesn't go all the way up to the surface,
Bingo.
And the edges of some of that grass, and some of the things that it takes a little more effort to find that you couldn't just launch a kayak there and immediately see like, oh, I'm casting to that tree, I'm casting to that group of lily pads. Like every bigger fish that we got was on that stuff. Yep. It was on the deeper stuff that it took a little more effort to see, but once you got in there, it's like that. Like, oh, the bigger fish are here.
Yep. Clockwork. It's fantastic. I see a comment before we circle back to everything. Ronald, hey, I never catch fish, skunk this year so far. That I would love to help you, and I will. If you want, shoot me an email, 603, like all numbers, bass@gmail.com, and let's talk it over a little bit, and let's kind of go over, I guess, like the basics of what it is that you're doing, where you're fishing, like how you're tackling and everything, and I can share, like at least a kind of quick hit, just explosion of information for you, and hopefully get you on the right track and start getting you on some fish. But please, if you're still here and you're hearing me, reach out to me via email. I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can. Donk Swampy, this is the same luck that you've had really, really bad luck at. Lol, if not, sounds just like it. All dink shallow, bigger fish and rocks, and 20 to 30 feet. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Mark did say, I caught 7-8 bass shallow yesterday, but it was still a grind. 3 to 4 areas held bass. The rest of the lake was a snooze fest. I know I'm going to start seeing that really soon, but I haven't seen it yet. I've run into that a lot once we get in like that early summer to like midsummer transition, where like it goes from you kind of find that pattern and the depth, and you can kind of replicate that literally everywhere in that depth range. Especially if like that same structure is consistent, but it's a very broad kind of answer. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it transitions to where it's like much, much, much more specific. And there's only like 5 or 6 productive spots like that on the whole body of water.
Well, the reason that I think that happens, I'm not an expert, but I think that when you go immediately post spawn, like where we were, it's like they were all shallow, and now they're all trickling their way back out, and like they're stopping at all the isolated cover, and that's when all the people that are not out there all the time, like the weekend warriors, which that's what we are too, but like the weekend warriors will go out and be like, oh, you can catch a fish off every tree, and it's like, yeah, it was great. It's like, yeah, it's great for like those 2 weeks,
right?
But then as you get like the water warms up, you get more into the summer. I feel like there are still some fish that stay there, and that's what you get on like frogs and stuff. But I feel like the majority of them start to school up, and that's why it'll be like nothing, 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 and then 20 of them, and then nothing, 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 and then 20 of them. And it's like, because they're all in big schools.
Yep. It's funny you say that because the last time we went out, not this past Sunday for the smallmouth, but the last trip before that, we specifically were fishing offshore because that was the third day of finding that like they're definitely offshore. We check shallow, like be thorough, and it's just easier to check shallow first. Yep, nothing, go offshore. Yep, they're the same exact kind of areas. They shifted a little bit. And we're still getting good fish, but not the bigs we're looking for. So we went like really far offshore to areas that I know there's literally nothing out there, but now I have forward-facing sonar. I was like, well, they have to be out here. They're probably just cruising and like, following schools of bait fish.
They have to be somewhere.
And sure enough, we started seeing more of that. There was the individual roamer. We've been marking some tanks, and we just haven't been able to get one of those to stick yet. And all of a sudden, we see this little school and get one of the fish to bite, and it's like a 2.5 pound largemouth, and it's in a school of like 20 of them. And like every time we see that, every time so far we've seen it, like that's got to be like a big school of crappie. And you pull up a 2.5 pound large, you're like, oh, no kidding.
That's where they all go.
Yep. There was one particular spot. Last thing, and then I want to get to the heart of the topic tonight. We were fishing, not this weekend, the past weekend, and I think I brought it up at last week's stream. But my particular honey hole, Andrew and I, spot we always go to, not too far from here.
Yes.
And we were going out to that point, right? We're like what I just talked about, going out in the middle of nothing and trying to find roamers. Yep. And all of a sudden he's like, what the hell is that? And I look up and there's just this stalk. It looked like a tree, but I think it honestly may have been a stick with a bunch of vegetation that grew around it because it like came up at a 70-degree angle and it was out in the middle of nothing in 16 feet of water. And it came up within 5 feet of the surface.
Really?
Yeah, and then I'm like, well, hang on. And I went and looked at my graph. I'm like, I have this marked. I don't even know when the hell I marked it. It was like 1,000 waypoints earlier than my latest waypoint. So I was like, okay, well, apparently I did find this. I have no idea what this is. So we're honing in on it, like 60 feet away with the active target. And all of a sudden we see like a couple of good marks, good-sized fish swimming off it. Andrew's like, yep, jerkbait. Fires it 20 feet past it, twitches it down. He's like 2 feet over the top. He just kills it. One big blob detaches, and you see his rod tip just go. He sets the hook, 15.5-inch crappie.
Oh, that's so good.
And then he did it 2 more times, and I got another one that was, I think I got a 15.5 inch as well. Like they were literally like all 3 crappie were 15+ inches.
That's in my mind. That's the equivalent of like a 5-pound bass.
Dude,
15-inch crappie.
They were tall. They weren't just like long. They were proportionate to that length.
That's so good.
Pulling up dinner platters.
So good.
It was awesome. I'll give you that spot. You go out there. You got to get active target. Well,
I'll go in your boat.
Then there's that. If fortunes are in your favor in the near future, what do you mean maybe?
Maybe I'll buy myself a little gift.
You know what you could do at that point? You could easily afford the HDS Live Pro, and you get 2 active target transducers for 1 16-inch graph. Then we can have the Scout. The Ford, and then the Scout. Simultaneously.
You even need a rod.
No, then just jump in the boat. That's what everybody tells me. All right, so before we actually dive into it, I'm going to ask the question I always do. First off, thank you for everybody joining the stream. As always, we greatly appreciate it. If you could do me a favor, hit like on the stream. If you haven't yet, that helps immensely. For those that, have been sharing the streams when we've been going, prior to that short break we took, the amount of sharing was phenomenal. You guys were killing it, and the stream was just on this constant upswing. And then we took a break, and the shares kind of dropped off a little bit, which I understand. This is why I'm asking. For those that do, have been doing it and are on social media, if you could continue to share the streams and the videos and everything, if and when you can, literally anything helps. It just helps so much. And again, even as something as simple as putting a like on the video or the stream, when you come back and watch anything later, just anything for comments, all of that helps drive the algorithm forward. It helps us out, and it's just, anything you guys can do to help, we always appreciate it. And if not, no worries. We appreciate you at least watching it anyway. That's always good. Aside from that, let us get into it. We're talking about fishing gear tonight. Lots and lots of fishing gear related questions. And again, to reiterate a point earlier, why are we doing this? We've done this in the past because I'm constantly getting questions, which I do not mind. I actually love these questions when I get them on Instagram or Facebook or, through YouTube. I get them through emails, whatever. And the question's always about hey, I want to throw the sniper. What are you throwing it on? It's kind of a loaded question. Depends on the time of the year, what size you're throwing it on, what you're fishing around. I want to throw jackhammer. What do you throw it on? Same deal. Kind of depends on the time of the year and everything. I I don't have a ton of combos, but I've fished through a lot of different models. So is Dennis. You actually might have more combos than I do now.
No, not anymore. I used to have like 30 of them, and then I got rid of all of them, and now I have like 12 mega bass combos.
Okay, so I'm just barely ahead of you. I think I have 15 total combos.
Yeah.
And five of those now. Actually, no. You know what? I think I have 17. But 5 of those are like literally specifically just swimbait stuff, like 8-foot plus rods with 300 size reels. So for traditional stuff, I think I only have 12 rods. So I think we're even Stevens then at that point.
Yeah.
That swimbait bite bit me hard.
Yeah. I mean, I have deep sea rods and surf rods and crappie rods
Yeah,
and stuff. But I mean,
true.
like bass rods. I tried to go quality instead of quantity. So like I would trade in like 3 like cheaper rods and get like 1 really, really nice rod that I felt like could do the things that those 3 rods could do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
That bug bit me because I had 1 really nice rod.
Dude, it's hard to get away from that.
I had like 1 really nice rod, and it would be like, I'm going to try to use, I like using this rod so much because it's nice that like I would try to do things on it that I shouldn't do on that rod.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to find a way to get like this feeling with all my rods. So it was like I traded in the quantity for the quality.
I'm glad you said literally that, because that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is like for the two of us, there's quite a few rods that we own, and especially Andrew too, that there's overlap between what it can do. Like obviously in a ideal world, you buy 1 rod for 1 technique, and that's not realistic for a lot of people. You need to have 1 rod that covers 2 or more techniques. And one of my Douglas spinning rods, it's a 7.6 medium extra fast, and it's rated 1/16 to 5/16, I think. Like it's light. But I'm using that for like 1/20th ounce Ned heads and like 1/16th ounce ball jigs, drop shot, like things like that. But that's 3 techniques that I just rattled off for that 1 rod. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, what can this ultra light, super finessey rod continue to do for other techniques before I have to look to one of my other ultra light spinning rods. And that's one of the other things I want to cover with this tonight. So I will give all of you the option on this. There's one of 2 ways we can move forward. Either A, we can forge on ourselves and pick something to start with and start talking about it. More than happy to do that. Or B, if a lot of you have a lot of burning questions, we can literally just start with questions from the chat. So I'll leave it up to you. You know what? It's one of those, either just say go ahead or start rattling off questions. And based on what I see in the chat, that will dictate how we're going to go through this. I will say, I kind of wait for chat to fill out a little bit here. While I was at the show, first off, Dan, I see you. Hi, how you doing? Second, got to hang out at the Douglas fishing rods friggin' booth while I was there. I got to meet the owner. I got to meet Fred, the guy that's building the rods, like designs them. I got to meet a lot of guys, and it was really cool. But especially being at Douglas rods, and the fact that I'm building out more of what I'm doing with their rods, especially that X Matrix series and the LRS rods. They're awesome. They have an entry-level rod that will be coming out later this year. They just released it at ICAST, and it's going to be closer to the $100 mark. And they're, I would say, a little bit more traditional in what their power and action ratings are and lengths. So there's more of that kind of like 1-to-1 correlation to how most everybody else in the industry would like rate their rods. And the benefit to all that, if anybody is interested in checking out anything from Douglas Rods, obviously, 1, you could do it online, or 2, you can go down to Ben's Tackle Shack down in Leicester, Mass. They have quite a few Douglas rods on hand. It's not the only ones they have, but they do have Douglas. So if you are interested, by all means, you can swing down there anytime. Again, he's got a great selection of both casting and spinning. So, if you have any questions, reach out to myself. I can also put you in touch with Sean Miller, one of my buddies. He's also on the team. He has rods on him, and he's based about central Vermont. So if anybody's in that neck of the woods, too, you can actually go out and meet up with him and, try the rods. There's plenty of spots you can bank fish really quick out in Vermont. You can try them out. So there's a couple of different options that we can get the opportunity for you guys to take a look at these in person if you're interested. Just keep that in mind. And I saw, go for it. I did like this from Mark. Decisions. A new house or 12 mega bass combos.
You're not wrong.
All right, tell you what, we'll bounce. We'll find a little happy medium between everything. What from Guggen Slayer? What leader, brand, and size for half-ounce sniper on a medium light spinning? Maybe get a medium eventually. You want to tackle that first? Because I've been doing a lot of talking.
Yeah, so it's a dangerous combination to throw a 1/2 ounce jig on a medium light rod.
Bingo.
One, because you run a risk of breaking your rod for one thing, but also with a jig that's that heavy, a 1/2 ounce isn't that heavy, but it's pretty heavy for what we're talking about. You're not going to be able to have a lot of swinging power on a medium light spinning rod. So I would say you need to go relatively heavy if that's your only option, and that's fine if that's your only option. If that's what you have and you're making it work, then I would say you need to have relatively strong braid. I usually go 10-pound braid, but I would say for something like that, I would go heavier. I would go probably 15 or.
I think you'd be okay with 10.
You'd be okay with 10?
I would go like 10 to 10, or if you're fishing around a lot of rocks, which I do, I would go 10 to 12-pound fluoro.
Basically the heavier pound fluoro that you have, the less stretch that you're going to have. Fluoro doesn't have that much stretch to begin with, but you can't afford really any stretch if you're using a medium light rod with a 1/2 ounce jig, because you need all the strength that you can get. So I would say minimum of 10 pounds, probably something like a Braze X or something like that that's going to be really abrasion resistant, because you're not going to be able to horse anything with a medium light rod. So it's going to get you into whatever you're around. So I would say 10 pound, 12 pound leader probably, and something that's really abrasion resistant.
Yep. And I will say the one thing too about the snipers is it uses I believe it's a 2-aught BKK hook. And it's kind of halfway between something like really light duty, like you would find on Gamakatsu sells just like a lead head football jig with, obviously a Gamakatsu hook. And those are like really thin hooks. You can bend those out pretty easily. And then, you have like a kind of a standard jig hook, like from anything else from Beast Coast Fishing, other BKK hooks, they're fairly stout. These on the snipers live halfway between those. Yeah. A medium light, I feel like you're going to have, unless it's a brand new hook, a harder time really setting that home.
Yeah.
So even if you had like 30-pound braid to a 20-pound leader, like I wouldn't do it. A medium rod at the very minimum. But, again, especially a 1/2 ounce like that, there's nothing really wrong with throwing that on a spinning rod if you're going that heavy, like 3/8 ounce and heavier. 1/2 ounce and heavier, I'm always throwing on casting. 3/8 ounce, I typically like to throw it on casting, but I used to throw it a lot on spinning. And when I throw a spider jig, I like throwing that 3/8 ounce primarily, and I will tend to throw it on a spinning rod more often than not.
About it.
Well, because I'm usually throwing it for smallmouth, and I need that little extra sensitivity.
Yeah, there's something about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like your easiest thing, like just go down to a 1/4 ounce. Just buy a 1/4 ounce sniper jig. It's like $5, and then you don't need to worry about your rod, and you can fish that fine on a medium light spinning rod.
And I can tell you what, I saw Kevin all the way down at the bottom there, Kevin Joyle, which, by the way, buddy, stay safe. I saw your comment. I forgot to get back to it. I'm sorry about the potential tornadoes up your way. Stay safe. So hopefully you guys are in the clear on at least that, but I know the rain and the continued flooding is problematic. But, back to that, Kevin just said it. 1/4 ounce on the sniper on a spin, deadly.
Oh, there you go.
It's deadly. It's really, really good. Jeremy Martin, what reels are those Megabass combos? Or on those Megabass combos?
Sure. So every baitcast reel that I have is a Corrado MGL, minus maybe like one or two, like on my Swimbait rod. I think it's a Tatula 300.
Yep.
But pretty much every every baitcast reel that I have is a Tatula MGL. I like the MGL 150 and I like the MGL 70, depending on the size of the rod. And then spinning reels, every spinning reel.
I'm going to grab a rod while you continue to talk about that.
Every spinning reel that I have is a Tatula LT spinning reel. But I've actually had some lack of durability with them. I don't know if other people here are using Tatula LT spinning reels. They're great. They're super light. That's what they're famous for, is being super light. They're super smooth. But what I found with them is that, like, I want to say I have 4 of them, and 2 of the 4 have broken after 2 seasons, and then I've replaced them because I like them. But it's still, like, for a $200 reel, I'd like to get more than 2 seasons out of it.
Yeah, I don't blame you there.
It's like stupid things too, like the bail has broken on one of them, which is weird, and like without stepping on it, like I don't know.
Speaking of that, I have a Lose Hypermag spinning reel, And when I have to go lift my trolling motor, like when we do go shallow, we get up in the veggies, I like have to step around all my graphs because I have a 16 and a 9, which is glorious, by the way. And when I was stepping back, I kind of lost track of where my foot was going. I stepped right on the handle of that spinning reel and snapped it right off
Gone.
on a hypermag. And it's one of my new ones. I've only used it like 3 times.
I'm shocked since you only weigh 110 pounds.
Fat jokes, here they come.
To rival that, like last week or the week before when I was out, I went to lift my trolling motor and the handle broke off and I just went flying back into the boat. Like the thing didn't snap, but like the plastic part of the handle like exploded in my hand and I just went flying backwards. Thankfully, I had a spare handle with me, which was like miraculous.
Nobody has a spare handle.
A spare handle with me. I was with Andrew, the other Andrew, and he was like astonished, like, "You have a spare handle?" It's like, no, I'm prepared. Everything that you could think could go wrong in a boat has gone wrong in my boat. So like, I have like every spare everything.
There you go. I do have a spare prop for my Ghost because I have that TH Marine prop nut, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Check it often. We're out fishing.
Worked their way off.
And what was it? We were fishing one spot. We wanted to move like 500 feet, so I just let the trolling motor down, fire up the outboard, and literally just idled. So like 3 miles an hour, about the same speed as my trolling motor going high. And I got up and I went, no, click. I'm like, click, click, click. Why am I not moving? Is this not on? I could hear it spinning. I'm like, the hell? And I look down. I'm like, my prop is gone.
Oh no!
The TH Marine prop nut backed out. Prop nut, prop all gone. And I'm like. And it was windy. I'm like, what the hell do we do? It was only noon. So thankfully the wind was like perfectly in line with the lake and it wasn't like wicked fast. Yeah. So we fished, we ended up actually fishing for 2 more hours and doing okay. Because just drifting some like prime lines and it worked. So it was okay. But I bought 2 props when I was done. And I left the whole backup prop with like the actual pin and the friggin' nylon nut. And I have a socket set in my truck. So if it happens again, it's not a problem. But dude, those are not cheap, by the way.
No, they're not.
On the Ghost, not cheap at all. I see Gordy's comment, and that's why I went to get a rod, so I want to do that. But before I do, Joseph, need to follow rod lure weight recommendations. I wholeheartedly disagree mostly. I will say in some cases, you are 110% right. Other than that, for most cases, no, I don't think that's accurate. There are plenty of rods that I have where I can throw something way lighter than what the rod recommends, and it's like just a match made in heaven. On both ends of the spectrum, like wicked light or wicked heavy. Like I have a rod that Wicked Custom Rods built me like 4 years ago. It's a 6'9", medium heavy fast spinning rod, and it was specifically meant for cracking like half-ounce tubes. So it's rated 3/8 to 3/4. If I throw anything less than a half ounce on it, I can't cast that rod at all. It sucks. I hate it. Half ounce is pretty good. 3/4 ounce and an ounce, that thing casts like a dream. I mean, like beautifully. I don't feel like even with a 1 ounce weight on there that I'm like overloading that rod. It lives for that.
Yeah, I'm not a rod,
things like that.
Not a rod builder, but like I don't think there's a lot of science that goes into those lure ratings. I think that they probably tie on a weight that's of that, and they feel it and say like, it's okay. So
I think if anybody's curious, I think if you go on Mudhole Tackle, or just search Mudhole, like fishing rod components, whatever. And for custom rod guys, like that's where they get a lot of their components. And they have their own blanks and stuff you can build off of. And in there, they recommend, like I think on at least their website, they actually have like the weight and power ratings, and they show like that whole curve of the rod under certain weights, so it can really demonstrate where that breaking point is.
But do they show this is it with a half ounce weight, this is it with a 3/8 ounce weight, this is it with 3/4 ounce weight, or does it just show this is the action of the rod?
This is the action of the rod with one specific weight. And I know for a fact that on North Fork Composites, where that's where yes, MD, turn on Save Search when searching Mudhole. But on oh god,
that's the best comment of the night. That's good. Let's just end it here.
Have a good night. So I have 4 rods that are built, custom rods built on the North Fork Composites X-Ray blank, which is like the best rod I've ever had built. I don't know anything else that touches it, and with good reason. The blank alone raw cost is $250. All like the most expensive rod that I own that's a production rod is 330. So it better be better than everything else I own. And I get some, I can't remember what guides I got on all those rods. But at any rate, like I know on North Fork Composites, same deal. Like they have that whole parabolic bend with like what the rate rating was, and then like that's how they kind of come up with it. So there is some science to it, and some companies do share how that science came up. But all right, so 603 Wild, Mr. Gordy. I would like to know what you're throwing for a swim bait setup. This is my new go-to. It is from Douglas Rods. It is their X Matrix. This is the DXC 805F. It's an 8-foot rod. It's rated 3 to 7 ounces, and it is a dandy. What are you doing?
I was going to help you hold it.
Oh, thanks. I was trying to get it past the wall so I didn't break it.
I made it 10 times worse.
So I throw that on at the moment, Lew's Super Duty 300, and that's the 6.5 to 1 ratio on this. This rod is phenomenal because it can do literally anything I want to throw on it. It's pushing it. I'm going to go up a little higher. Well, no, let's throw that back there. This rod is great. The balance on it's phenomenal. The butt grip on it is, if it were an inch longer, it would be perfect. But as it is, I like it. I'm not going to criticize it by any means. It loads up beautifully, whether I'm throwing what I just showed you, which was a 7-inch Citizen from Working Class Zero. Actually, was that the 7? Yeah, that was a 7. It'll throw a 6-inch Citizen. I've thrown a 5.75-inch, which I think is the length, Chuleta Junior from CHR Swimbaits, another soft body swimbait. I have thrown like anywhere from heavy 3 to low 5-ounce swimbaits on that, from wake baits to crankdowns to glides, and it handles it all like a champ. I've thrown an Alabama rig on it and like a heavy version when going for like stripers in the winter, and handles that great.
Any when you're using that, and this is a question, I'm not a huge swim bait person, as you know.
Yep.
Any difference between when you're throwing a single hook bait and when you're throwing a treble hook bait when you use that?
I literally look at it the same as fishing traditional. Because even though you've got these giant honking trebles on like a crankdown swim bait, which for all intents and purposes is just a giant crankbait.
Yeah.
I set the hook the same. Like I don't like hammer into them. When I first started using it, before I like caught enough fish to understand what I was doing with it, I was like jacking them up. Like I was setting it like it was a jig hook. Okay. And I lost a couple of fish. I'm like, why am I doing that? They're just giant trebles. Like they're bigger, they're thicker gauge, but they're still like really, really sticky trebles.
Still a treble hook. Yeah.
So, and it's a stout rod. So if you think about like, it's an even scaling from say fishing a Vision 110. And in my opinion, I could be entirely wrong, but this is my opinion, and it's worked flawlessly since this is the way I've been looking at it, my perspective. And it's the same as using like a medium, moderate, fast with a Vision 110 versus an 8-foot heavy, fast rod with a 6-inch crankdown that weighs 4.5 ounces. Okay. So with like some size 2-aught trebles.
So you're setting the hook as you would if you were fishing a crankbait. It's just you happen to be using a swim bait rod.
Yep. Okay. So if you go back and look at, like I caught that 4-pound, 10-ounce largemouth on that 9.5-inch shad glide from Bull Shad Swim Baits. Yeah. And I caught a 510 last year up in Vermont on the Bait Sanity Explorer Glide Gen 2. Mm-hmm. And I've had a couple of others. And on all of those, like I literally, you can almost not see the bite, and I just kind of swing. But that rod's so stiff, and all those, I'm usually using 20 or 24 pound line. That's the same thing as just a giant jerkbait at that point. I just kind of like swing, and they just load up nice. But then at that point, you crank down into them hard. Dual purpose. You're really getting the hook set home for one, and then two, you're trying to open up their mouth and fill it with a ton of water so they can't come up and head shake and use the leverage of the weight of the bait against you. So you like really, it's like deep sea fishing at that point. You're just freaking giving everything you got and open their mouth and get it to fill up like a bucket of water. So that is my go-to right now. I have 3 more rods. I have one that's like super light duty. They're all 8-footers though. I have a custom built one on that North Fork Composite X-Ray blank. My first swim bait rod I had made by Wicked Custom Rods. It's a 1/2 ounce to 3 ounce. And I can use that for a few of my crankdowns and a few of my top waters. I actually like that a little bit better for some of my smaller soft body swim baits, and especially if I'm in an area like where I want straight braid on it, or like lighter duty top waters. Like that's my straight braid swim bait rod, and I'll throw a 70-pound braid on that. And like it's nice, but if you get over that 3 ounce mark on that, you can feel it. Like it's kind of like it doesn't feel right casting that. You throw a 4-ounce swim bait on it, it doesn't like it.
It's a noodle.
You can do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Then I have 2 more Lew's Super Duty rods that I'm eventually going to swap out for Douglas rods. One is a 1 to 4 ounce model, and the other one's a 4 to 10 ounce model. That 4 to 10 ounce one is really the one I primarily use for my Depths 250, my 9-inch Shad Glide from Bull Shad Swimbaits, well, 9.5 inch, my 9-inch Bait Sanity Explorer, like all my 9+ inch glides that are like 6.5 to 7 ounces. That Douglas rod will do it, but it's towing the line. So I have one 4 to 10 ounce rod that's my big boy rod. And when we go out for stripers, like that's my go-to rod because we go for stripers. Like I want the extra oomph. Yeah. And I throw that on a Lew's Super Duty 300 wide. So like it's a big honking reel. It holds a lot of line even for 24 pound. So that's that. Did you have a swim bait set up with you? No?
I don't have one with me, but my swim bait setup's a Levante Leviathan with a Tatula 3. That's the one that I have, a Tatula 300 on it. And I go straight 20 pounds fluorocarbon on there, Sunline Sniper. And I believe that rod is 2 to 8 ounces.
That's perfect.
But I would never in a million years throw an 8-ounce bait on that rod. But I think that I've thrown 2 to 4 ounce baits on there pretty well. And also when we go striper fishing, I throw A-rigs on there and it handles them really well. And I don't do a ton of swim bait fishing, so like that rod is enough that anything that I want to throw, I can do it on there. I don't have any 8-ounce baits, but gets it done for me.
Yep. So I saw the comment down there. I'm not going to pin it because it's buried and I want to get back through the chat. But I saw it again from Gordy 603 Wild. What size line do I use for that? 2 different lines, either 20-pound heavy cover from Defiant, which is their, against their heavy cover, straight fluorocarbon. It's similar to a Brasix in like what its intended purpose is. It's a heavier duty line, specifically meant to work phenomenal against abrasion resistance. You're fishing that, as the name implies, against heavy cover, which I use exclusively on all my jig rods. I use it, actually, I like that better on my bigger moving baits, spinnerbait, jackhammer, things like that for my 18.3 pound, I think is what theirs is. 18 point something. On my swim baits, I use I think it's 20 pounds, maybe it's 21. I have to think about that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But again, it's the heavy cover fluoro. It's 20 or 21, whatever it is for one. On another rod, I have the 23.6 pound heavy cover. And then on my big baits, I have, again, my Depths 250, like anything in that 9+ inch range and like 6-7 ounces in weight or heavier. I have the 23.6 pound soft casting. Soft casting fluorocarbon from Defiant. I keep getting their soft and smooth casting mixed up. Soft casting is a fluorocarbon, which I would akin to Invisix from Seagar.
Okay.
And then their smooth casting is their braid. But I like that because it loads up nice. Like the combination of having the right size rod, the right size reel, and then that 23.6 pound soft casting, which is a little bit stretchier. Like when you go to huck a Depths 250, it loads beautifully. And I have had zero problems with setting the hook. That's what Andrew, we both got that line at the Northeast Swimbait Expo in 2022. So we've been fishing that line since when we start throwing it, March of 2022, and it zero issues. I mean, zero issues at the line. It is absolutely perfect.
You think it's the 0.6 that makes all the difference?
It could be.
It's the 0.6.
To be fair,
If it was 0.0, you'd be screwed.
No, yeah,
you'd break off every fish.
A monkey that's chunky. Want to thank you. Posted a comment a couple weeks ago, and you took the time to give me a great answer. Previous videos to check out. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad that helped.
Oh, that's nice.
Mark, is the new Douglas series going to be technique specific? I honestly cannot remember. There was a lot going on yesterday, so I apologize for not being able to remember that specific answer. Wow, damn, we have really... Oh, okay, sorry. P. Boucher, thoughts on pitching, flipping reel, Lew's SP. I myself will never buy one because I don't do it enough specifically. I just tend to run all my casting reels so light that whether I'm going to rip it a 200-foot cast on a half-ounce jig or I'm going to pitch it 10 feet from me, my reel can do both. So I could see myself eventually getting one, but I don't have a specific purpose or need for it. I would not do it that often that I could benefit from spending that kind of money on, like, you know, a very narrow technique reel.
You literally can't do anything besides that.
No, it only holds like what, 10 yards of line or something, or like 20 yards of line.
It's something like that. Like that. If I lived in Florida, I'd get one. But
so I will say though, I know a lot of guys that have bought it because they love to flip and pitch, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. So if that's in your wheelhouse for your interests and budget and everything, I don't think you can go wrong with it. Will Anderson from Facebook. I like the fact that I'm seeing more comments pop up from Facebook, which is awesome. But from Will, gentlemen, I do have a question and could use some help if you have time to cover electronics as part of the heat topic. I am an avid bass fisherman, but not a tournament angler. I reached that point in life where I can work less and fish more. I just really need to upgrade my 10 to 15-year-old electronics and trolling motor. Can you tell me what you feel is the most important features I should look for in both? I don't need the latest and greatest, but I want something that would be really fun. And we lost the rest because I think StreamYard limited the character limit on that. I will tell you, Will, if you're still here, buddy, we did, if you go to the channel, so you land on our homepage and you'll see, you know, kind of like you'll see our banner with, you know, pictures of us and stuff, and it says our channel name, our logo, and just below that you'll see like home, videos, live, shorts, community, things like that. Click on live, go back through there, and I don't think you have to go too far back. You will eventually see one that was all about bass fishing electronics, and the thumbnail has got, you know, like a bunch of, I don't know what I just heard out there. That was weird. You know, like fish finders and stuff on it. So it's really, really hard to miss. We literally covered exactly that with Steve, the owner of Bass Fishing Electronics. He's based in Auburn, New Hampshire. It's actually where Andrew works now too. And he's phenomenal. That guy is a wealth of knowledge. Before he even officially started that business, I met him through Bass Boat Central in 2018. And he was on the phone with me for 2 hours. I'm not even kidding or exaggerating. 2 hours telling me all the pros and cons between Humminbird and Lowrance for my budget at the time, because I knew I was buying the Skeeter at the end of the year, and I wanted to buy new electronics for it, as new as I could get. And I wanted everything to be all touchscreen and interlinked the whole 9 yards. And he has done nothing but get better as he's gone further into this. His business is booming. He is a phenomenal resource, not only for questions as well, but for buying things. So I can't recommend him enough, and that stream we did with him will literally answer any questions you could have. If it doesn't, reach out to me via email or on any, like, you can message me, you know, directly through Facebook, and everything comes to me. I'll be happy to answer any other questions you have.
he walked me through fixing my Ghost for free before we went to Champlain.
See?
I was screwed. I was not going to have a trolling motor.
Yep.
He stayed same thing. Stayed on the phone with me for like an hour. Walked me through like, this is exactly what you need to do. Didn't want anything in return. Just wanted to help fix it. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy, and he likes helping people. And it's just like the guy earns his business. So there's that. Looking through the comments to see.
Oh, good. It's
Another
raining.
good question. Huh?
It's raining.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, I'm way behind. Aha, Jason. Spinnerbait, chatterbait combo. I am so glad this came up. Yeah. I had the pleasure of spending probably close to 45 minutes yesterday talking with Jimmy Reese. And because he's on the Douglas team, so he was in the booth all day. There was a bit of a lull later in the day, like the crowds are starting to go out. But this was at like I think 2:30 when maybe 3:30 when I finally left. Yeah, no, wow, no, it was like actually 4:30 by the time I left the show, and I was there like almost an hour before the doors opened, and we specifically talked about that because I prefer a stiffer rod 90% of the season until it comes to that early spring bite when they get up really, really shallow in like stupid shallow water, but getting them on that reaction bite is key, and I've talked about this a lot, and I get a lot of shit about this for fishing jackhammers on straight braid, but that's when I use like a really soft rod, like a medium, like fast, or a medium, like closer to a medium moderate fast, and I back my drag weight down on my reel. So if I do get a little overzealous on my hook set, I'm not ripping it out or tearing this big hole in the side of the fish's face, and I don't lose fish when I fish like that in the spring. It's a narrow window, but it has been like critical to my success for exactly what we're doing in very specific areas and situations. So we talked about this topic specifically, and he was like, kind of head scratch. He's like, dude, I thought I fished like strong rods. You fish stronger rods than I do. And I was like, it's just, it works for me. I don't miss fish. We catch plenty, whole 9 yards. Not to say that there isn't always room for improvement. And we elaborated on that. So my chatterbait combo is likely going to change a little bit. I'm going to repurpose one of my other rods to fish in parallel with another rod that I would specifically fish. 2-part answer for my part. I specifically like a 7.2 heavy fast rod for both of those. However, when it comes to fishing a bladed jig, jackhammer, chatterbait, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing at the end of the day. I'm going to try something a little bit more supple. Because in the back of my mind, I felt like everything was fine. And while talking to Jimmy Reese, he was like, you really need to throw it on a more supple rod. Because I was the exact same as you. But I promise you, after like going out and playing with it, and benefits of being a pro, right? You can just kind of get any rod you want and just do this testing. But he was like, your quality and your catch number goes up on a much softer rod because you're going to get a lot more action out of that bait doing the exact same thing, but just not on a broomstick. So I currently throw a 7.2 heavy fast, a 7.2 medium heavy fast. Depends on the conditions and the weight and what I'm trying to do. I will bounce between the two for both of these. Although for spinnerbait, I almost exclusively stick with a 7.2 heavy fast. And I'm also going to throw on a 7.6 medium fast for one of my Douglas LRS series rods. I'm going to throw jackhammer on that. So I know the next time I go out, probably this Sunday, I'm specifically leaning towards going to a place with largemouth. I'm pretty confident I know a spot we can go to where jackhammer bites should be good. I'm going to rig up 2 identical jackhammers on both different rods, 7.2 heavy fast and that 7.6 moderate fast. And I have another 7.2 medium heavy. Actually, no, I literally have a bladed jig model from Lew's, their signature series. Yeah. It's 7.3 medium heavy, and it's their Thunder Cricket / bladed jig. I'll throw it on that.
It's a little stiff.
It's like on the medium side of medium heavy, though.
Yeah. Well,
it breaks.
Maybe it's a little fast. Maybe not stiff. It's a little fast.
It is a little fast. It feels like solid, it feels like just shy of medium heavy, like a medium heavy.
Plus. Medium plus.
On the medium of medium heavy, it's like east by west.
Yeah, it's like a capital M and a lowercase h.
Yeah.
Medium heavy. Yeah.
But yeah, almost like halfway between fast and extra fast. I want him to elaborate on his in a second, and we'll show the action differences between these, what we're talking about, because the one he has is literally perfect for what I would like to do. I'm going to play around with that. Now, when we're talking about 6.3 to 1, period. You could get away a little bit faster. There are times, like when you get into like an insane spring bite, early spring bite, pre-spawn bite, I'll throw it on my jig reel with straight 15-pound. I'll go 8.3 to 1, and like I'm not burning it, but like I'm, nice steady retrieve on a faster reel. It's kind of cooking along. And I like throwing it on that every once in a while, and I've had good success with that. But primarily on both of those, if I had to pick one, 17 to 20 pound. Right now I'm settled in on the 18.3 pound heavy cover from Defiant Fishing. And on a 6.3 to 1 reel, I'm currently still using the Lew's BB1 speed spools.
On a chatterbait?
I feel a differing answer coming. Your turn.
Well, for a line, I use 12-pound line on a chatterbait. And in my entire life, I have never broke a single fish off on a chatterbait.
You're a champ. I could never do that.
12-pound, but I use a different rod than you. I use a softer rod, and I can't use, like, I wouldn't, I don't know. Like, I feel like if you're using a super heavy rod, you don't want to put 12-pound line on it. Like, you want to have heavier line on it.
Yep.
So.
Why? And the other thing, too, is, like, if I'm throwing a moving bait like that, more often than not, I'm fishing around some ugly shit. Oh, yeah, so, like, I want, like, that heavy line, because I'll get buried in weeds and stuff, and, like, I can't tell you the number of times I've lost fish on, like, a Texas rig on straight 12-pound, because it gets in the weeds, and there's just not enough oomph that I can horse them out, and I end up losing them. The idea of fishing that is enticing, but admittedly frightening.
You should try it.
I don't have enough reels to play with different line weights. I could swap a reel.
Swap a reel. Put a crankbait reel on there. It's the same gear ratio.
I have a Shimano Casitas still with straight 12-pound.
Is that 23 years old at this point?
It's pretty old. Dude, but that thing, I swear to God, that reel is in better shape. Never cleaned it, never tuned it. Better shape than any of my Lew's reels that I have. But I've always said, Shimano and Daiwa 1A, 1B, depending
Yeah,
on
they
preference.
have
They're kings.
Have it. All right.
So yours. And
So
while you're talking about it, I'm going to put the action on the rod behind you.
All right.
You're up.
So do I need to move? Oh.
No, you're good.
My
I
rod?
should be able to demonstrate it behind you without you having to move. Got it? Go ahead.
All right. So the chatterbait rod that I use is Megabass Destroyer P5 Mad Bull. Can you see it? You might have to move back a little bit so that they can see. Yeah. So, and the reason that I like this rod, so it's a Megabass doesn't go by medium, heavy, all that stuff. They go by power and they go by F power, and I think it's an F5. If you look on the F5.
F5.
So F5 is basically their medium heavy, but the thing about it is it's a medium heavy, but it's a moderate action. So you can see as Sean bends it, the rod will bend like all the way, almost halfway down the rod.
Dude, this is legit perfect being over here, by the way.
That's it. There.
It's magic.
There.
Look at it go.
But this rod, I'm telling you, like, if anybody ever splurges on a rod for anything and you love throwing chatterbaits, like, this rod will be the best investment that you ever make. Like, it is the most fun rod that you could ever throw a chatterbait on. You can almost feel the bite before the fish even gets to your bait because it's so sensitive. Like, first of all, the rod weighs nothing. But the biggest thing is that when I fish a chatterbait, largely I'm fishing grass, right? Like, I'm like, I don't know about you, but like I will fish it around wood and stuff, especially like in the early spring.
No,
But
you're right, primarily grass.
But for the most part, I'm fishing around grass. And in my mind, that's why you want that action. You want that moderate action, but you still want that medium heavy power. And that's a weird thing because most moderate actions come with, can you feel a fish fart? It depends on the direction of the fish, I guess. But if you think about moderate action rods, most of them are medium because they're crankbait rods. And finding a moderate action rod that's medium heavy power is a rare combination. And this rod has it. And what that does is you still have a ton of power, but it has a little bit of a delay to the power, I guess is the best way I can think to describe it. So when you're reeling a chatterbait through the grass, it gets hung up in the grass. Most of your bites, those of you that fish a chatterbait, most of your bites come right when it breaks through the grass, and it's hung up and then it breaks out, and kind of similar to like a square bill. So what that does is that little bit of delay in that medium heavy power, because it's a moderate action, lets the fish get it, lets the fish bite it and actually get it in its mouth before that power kicks in and actually fights the fish. And it makes such a difference in your chatterbaits that like you'll never lose a fish if you hook it on that rod. Spinnerbaits, different story for me. So if I'm throwing a light spinnerbait, like a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait, or maybe even a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, and I'm around really light cover, I'll use that rod too, and it works fine. But in my mind, I don't think that a chatterbait and a spinnerbait are similar at all. I think that a chatterbait and a square bill are similar, and I would almost rather throw a chatterbait on a square bill rod than throw it on a spinnerbait rod. I think that a spinnerbait is more similar to something like a swim jig or something like a jig, like a normal jig, where it's typically a much larger hook. It's a heavier bait. It's something that I feel like when you get a bite on a spinnerbait, you need to wail on it and really have a much more powerful rod than you necessarily need with a chatterbait. So I'm going upsize with a spinnerbait. I don't necessarily want moderate action. I want fast action. You can still go medium heavy, or you can go heavy. I go medium heavy with my spinnerbaits. I can show you the rod if you want, but I have a medium heavy, fast action rod. Apparently, this person doesn't agree.
Like, Dennis is like Alan Caprillion on a fishing show. Sorry, I like that.
Hopefully, I sound better than Al Caprillion.
Yeah, you definitely do. That was just funny to me. I love Al Caprillion. Any other last thoughts on that?
That's what I got.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I know I kind of derailed because I was laughing. I'm sorry. Evan did ask, line twist has been a problem for me. How do you guys deal with it, or any line spooling tools that help? I straight braid on all my spinning reels. with a fluoro leader. Just get away from that. That's not an issue. On all my casting reels, I just deal with it on my heavier stuff because, like, on the 23.6 pound, soft casting from Defiant, the memory on that gets pretty bad after a couple months. But I retie that rod because what do I use? Improved clinch knot, which doesn't take a lot of line. Like, you cut that off, and you go to retie it, you're only wasting like 3 inches of line at a time. And I only have to retie it once a week. I always retie everything I throw every time I go fishing. Like, if it's a week apart. You know, if I go fishing on Friday, I'm not going to retie for Sunday. Mm-hmm. But if I go Sunday to Sunday, I retie everything. I am religious about retying. Mm-hmm. But if I retie that, again, you know, like it's a Super Duty 300 wide with 23.6 pound, that's a ton of line. It takes a long time to go through that. And when you're casting a bait that big, the line memory, I don't feel is really that big of an issue. So I just deal with it. For everything else, I go through line too fast before the line memory becomes an issue. So if you're specifically talking about spinning rods, I freaking cannot recommend it enough. Go to braid to a fluorocarbon leader. Not only are you going to catch more fish, one, but two, I know you're doubling up on the amount of spools of line you have to buy, but it is actually cheaper in the long run. Because that one spool you buy for your leader, if you have a crankbait rod, right, and you spool a brand new reel with that 10-pound line or 12-pound, whatever you have, you still will always have line left over, and that becomes your leader line spool. And you could probably tie like 50 liters with what's left after that, if not more. And those are like 15 to 20-foot leaders. Yeah. So it's a lot of line. And then that braid, I literally don't replace my braid for like 2 or 3 years. Yeah, it lasts a long time. You don't have to mess around with it. And I know guys that will save like the spools from their braid, and they'll spool it up in the spring, and then for the next spring they will unspool it.
Like a storage thing.
Yeah, like on this, I forget how they said they did it. How did they do it? So they do it so they basically flip the line around. So everything that was all at the bottom that's fresh. Yeah. They get it back out and they re-spool it.
You take an empty spool and you put it on a drill on a bit and you tape the line to it, and then you turn the drill on and it spools it in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not right.
But no, because it would still
be the same.
Yeah, maybe they think they just go from one reel to the next, and then one reel ends up getting.
It could be.
One reel ends up getting realigned, but everything else just you flip it, something like that. I remember reading about that, but it was like 10 years ago, so bear with me. But it can be done. So there's things like that. That helps. Other than that, like I know guys, like there's a couple of companies that have line conditioners, and I'm still on the fence about that. I'm not really sure if it actually helps. It's kind of one of those voodoo-y kind of things. Yeah. I've used it a lot, especially years ago, and I couldn't tell if it really helped. I don't know. Like on the one hand, I suppose it makes sense, right? But on the other hand, it's like it's straight fluorocarbon. It's supposed to like shed water. So like, how is this spray, this like watery looking spray, supposed to absorb and make the line more supple? It doesn't really kind of add up.
The one thing that I will add, I agree with everything you said. When you're reeling line on your reels and you have a spool sitting there, there is, I think, a right direction to reel that in. Mm-hmm. And whether the spool is sitting one side or the other side, one side it will come off a little more coiled than the other side. And I feel like I always try to flip it until I feel like as it's coming off, it's coiling less. And then I do that as you're getting on there. And that helps a lot of it. The other thing that I'll say is when you put it on your line, or when you put it on your reel, try to have as much tension on it as you reel it onto your reel as you can. If you reel it on there pretty loosely, you're going to get a ton of line twists, and you're going to get problems with that as you're casting it. So try to give it a lot of tension as you're reeling it onto your reel, and it'll remediate a lot of that stuff.
There's so many line spooling stations out there you can buy. Like everybody carries some version of it. I ended up finding one like 8 years ago on Amazon that I still use to this day, and it's supposed to be a little suction cup that just works off your tabletop. But the suction cup on it kind of sucks. But the rest of it's great. It's got these like two basically like barrels, but they're tapered. So like they really fit in, like regardless of what size that center hole is on the spool, it can fit a whole wide variety. And then there's two big springs, and then two basically like super thick washers with little thumb screws in the end. So like if the springs are that long, I will compress them to about a third of that. Not so tight that the springs are like all the gaps are closed, but pretty close. I make it pretty tight. and I tighten on the thumb screws, and then I spool from that. And I found that that's tight without feeling like I'm really working hard against it.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's literally set up on the other table right now with a brand new spool, 15.5 pound heavy cover from Defiant, because I just relined my primary jig reel the other day, and I've got 2 more I got to reline.
Yep.
And it's a 330 meter freaking spool. So it's just hanging out. But like, even getting something like that with just the little like things like, dude, I think it was like $5 on Amazon. It's cheap, and it's kind of a piece of crap, but it's a functional piece of crap. There's way nicer ones out there for not that much more money, like 10 to 15 bucks. I highly recommend you get one. It does make things a lot easier for you. The suction cup on the thing doesn't work a damn anymore, but I have like, these quick clamps for like woodworking and stuff. I just grab one of those. I clamp it to the table. It's like, just grab what you have around the house and make it work, right? So, for a tool I already had for a completely different purpose and something I got off Amazon for $5, I spool all my lines with exactly what Dennis said, like just the right amount of tension. And it makes a huge difference. Tom did ask, best bait for my 4-year-old to catch his first bass. Not very patient, like his dad, so power fishing options would probably be best. I would still recommend a good old bobber and worm. Dude, I don't know. I feel like, at least for my kids when they were both 4, and I just stuck them with a bobber and a worm, and like they see me fishing. They're out there. They want to be with me fishing. They want to catch fish like Dad. But the moment they start cracking a bunch of bluegill, their faces lit up, and they had the time of their life at that age. Both my kids. Now one's 11 and one's 6. Fuck, I'm getting old. So, welcome to your future.
You are getting old.
Fatter, angrier, tired. Less hair, the whole 9 yards. So they had a blast. Once they got tired of that, I don't know. I've been finding the last few years I have to wait until like prime time.
Senko.
Yeah, but even like that's slow fishing. But it's like
slow fishing for 10 seconds until a fish eats it.
True. They always have a Senko in hand, and if they don't have a Senko, I throw a jackhammer on them, because that's just dumb easy fishing, and I feel like a jackhammer gets bit more often than a spinnerbait. It's just kind of like, to me, a jackhammer is kind of like that Senko fishing, but in the power fishing world, you absolutely can and should, and I do get a lot more elaborate with it, but you don't have to. It's kind of like a dumb thing. You can just like straight burn it, and you end up catching a lot of good fish just doing that. So for my kids, or just like any kid in general, it works great for that.
Several people have just put spinnerbait into the chat. Spinnerbait. There's another one here. Spinnerbait.
I mean,
this is asking what we throw a spinnerbait on.
You can't go wrong, but I find the jackhammer to be more universally accepted by the bass.
I don't think that they're arguing your spinnerbait. I think they might be asking what rod you throw a spinnerbait on.
Oh, I thought they were.
I don't know.
A
lot of people are just saying spinnerbait.
Okay. Alec, the Douglas LRS C715F is a good option for the chatterbait. Been throwing mine on that lately and love it. Also a great rod for Little Mag. So funny enough, I was down at Ben's the week before the Plunder Bay Open, and he had that model there, and I was looking at it, I'm like, damn, that actually could be like a really good replacement for my jig rod. And while I was down at the at ICAST yesterday talking with Jimmy Reese, he said the same thing. He picked it up, and I was already looking at it, and it was after the bulk of that conversation, and he's like, well, what about this? And I was like, my brain was already going there, because I was already looking at this for what, like a light duty jig setup. Like that could probably be fine for half-ounce jigs, but like especially for 3/8-ounce jigs, like I think that rod would be like mint for it. It's that rod has a good amount of backbone. It's as close to a identical replacement for my 7.2 medium heavy fast custom jig rod, my very first custom rod I ever had built, as I can find from Douglas.
Did you break that one?
3 guides are gone. I can get it repaired. It'll probably cost me $120 just to get. I mean, it'll probably cost me $90 just for the guides.
Really?
Jesus. They're expensive guides on that. If memory serves correct, just the cost on the set of guides was $120.
Everyone makes fun of me on here for Megabass rods. Nobody's saying anything about your $90 guides.
As much as I like the Megabass rods, I'd take one of those custom rods over it any day. That rod has done wonders for me. And I thought about it when I had 2 guides break off of me this weekend, and it killed me.
On one rod or two different rods?
On that custom jig rod of
Is
mine.
it falling apart? You still using it even though it's missing guides?
I was missing one, and I was using it, and then two more broke off this weekend, and I was like,
Well, no wonder.
start playing taps for it. I think I'm gonna wall hang it. I really think I'm gonna throw it up here behind us.
That's fair.
I've got a lot of really good memories with that rod, and I know at some point it's gonna break because you've seen my hook sets.
It's atrocious.
It's
It's ungodly.
I think it's time to hang it up, appreciate everything it's done for me, and appreciate all the memories, and put her up on the wall before I really just kill it. So anyway, that was one of the rods I was contemplating for a replacement.
I think it's earned its retirement.
It has. I don't think it has. I'm just, it's kind of like the Tom Brady rods. Like
That's fair.
it's old, it's battered and
time.
bruised.
It's
It's
time.
proven itself.
Everybody knows it's time before the rod knows it's time.
Out of everything else out there for the rods, like that is the GOAT rod. Undeniably. There's some up and comers. They're killers. The younger killers.
Yeah.
And they could be in that conversation. But for right now, that rod is my
rod.
Tom Brady rod. And do you chance one more year with it, and maybe it breaks early and
Maybe it's
and
gone forever.
You've tarnished its legacy, or do you hang it up on a high note with just a little bit of damage?
That's the struggle. That's the struggle.
So anyway,
We digress.
oh, did you
Yes, the expensive rod jokes. Just bring them on. I'm having a child, so there'll be no more expensive rods in my future.
Dude, I have one kidney now. I did like this for MD. I responded to him in the chat. Can you feel a fish fart on it? And I said, I've got spinning rods. I can feel a goby fart on it at 75 feet of water. Dude, that's the coolest thing with a really nice spinning rod you got on the St. Lawrence River. And they're like midsummer pattern. You're out. You can catch them at 75 feet.
That's cool.
And
I've never caught one that deep.
we did.
You
And
caught one in 75?
Yep, it was gnarly. They weren't that big, but it was still like we caught
cool.
some. Pound and a half or something like that.
I think 63 feet is the deepest I ever got on Winnie in like
Damn.
August. Yeah.
I've got something to share with you after the stream. Let's touch base on that again.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, it was like it was that the first year? Yeah, 2019 when the water was the highest it had ever been in recorded history on the St. Lawrence River. And we found ourselves in the river at one point, and we found this hump in the middle that topped out at about 65. But right on the opposite side, right down to about 75, we could see them just on that downslope, hiding just past the current break. Mm-hmm. And the current was ripping with a 1 ounce drop shot weight, casting as far as we could. By the time it hit 65 feet at the bottom, it had come back to the boat. So you're ripping an almost 200-foot cast, and it took for 200 feet to come down 65 feet. That's how fast the current
What rod
was.
are you throwing a 1 ounce drop shot weight on?
Unfortunately, my 7.2, well, that was actually my first custom built spinning rod, but it was only rated to a 1/2 ounce. So you had to be careful. You had to be really careful. But it
Could
lead
you still
weight.
actually like get a hook set? Like,
Oh yeah,
Good.
you feel the lead weight going down, and then we were holding it just beyond that break, and you just literally 75 feet down. You feel all the gobies, and then nothing. And every time that happened, you have like a 5-second pause of nothing, and you're just like, okay, it's
Here it
coming.
comes. Yeah.
Smalley.
They all scattered.
I had that discussion with my buddy Tom, Smallmouth Freaks, when we were up on Lake Ontario last year. And I was like, dude, I'm convinced that, there's gobies and smallmouth everywhere. And you put that bait down there, and like 50 gobies, you're like, oh my God, food. Yeah. And they all come up out of their little nooks and hiding places. And from a small distance, Smalley sees nothing. And then all of a sudden they see 50 gobies going absolutely ham on something. And they're just like, I got to go there. And that's what's happening. All those gobies come up is what's triggering the smallmouth to come over and bite.
Makes sense.
There's clockwork. You just feel, and then nothing. And you're just like, it's coming.
It's happening.
What is Dennis smoking?
That is a great point that Joseph D'Souza made. So that's also why you use a heavier rod for a spinnerbait, is that a spinnerbait has a wire that gives, whereas a chatterbait, the line tie is connected directly to your hook, and there's absolutely no give. So your rod has to give. Whereas the spinnerbait itself gives a little bit.
With one exception. With some exceptions. Most spinnerbaits absolutely do give. If you fish something like Rocky Ledge, theirs tend to be a lot more rigid, which is good but also bad depending upon what you want for action out of your spinnerbaits. Like there are some where that like really kind of springy, softer material out of it the way you can kind of pop it and flare it, you can almost like when you just snap your rod along, the spinnerbait just kind of like collapses on itself and springs back before it settles. And like I'm exaggerating that motion, but imagine it goes woof, woof, woof. So it just kind of looks like whatever you're trying to imitate has more action to it than just straight lining it and pausing it. Whereas a Rocky Ledge tends to be a lot more stiffer, and they're durable as hell. You buy one, it'll
last forever.
Like literally all mine, because I've had such terrible luck the last few years on a spinnerbait. All the rubber bands on them are dry rotting off.
Are you using really stiff spinnerbaits?
There was a point where I was almost exclusively using Rocky Ledge, and I think that was part of my problem.
I mean, I don't ever want to speak ill about anything, but like 99.999999999% of the time, I think you will get more bites on a spinnerbait that flexes.
Yeah.
I think that is what triggers bites on a spinnerbait is the flex.
I completely agree with you on that, and I think that's why my spinnerbait bite went to such crap, because I was trying to do the same thing I've been doing on these softer spinnerbaits my entire life. Well, I'd say my entire life for the last 10 years prior to that point, to something that does not have the same action.
Yeah.
And I was throwing it on a stiffer rod to boot too. So like just a 1-2 punch combination that really hindered everything I've been doing before. And since then, since I've gone back to some of my older spinnerbaits, I still get bit on the Rocky Ledge, but it's like the difference between a football jig and an Arky head. Like you could technically get away with a football jig all year long, but you wouldn't use a football jig in the middle of a milfoil patch.
May not be the best choice.
Right. So this, no knock against Rocky Ledge. There's some of the best spinnerbaits I've ever bought. Period. Bar none. The colors are great. The options are great. No lead. They are freaking durable. You'll never break them.
Very durable. Yep.
But yeah,
you get your money's worth for sure.
Just like anything else, sometimes that is a hindrance to what it is that the fish want. Yep. So having multiple options certainly helps. And in all fairness, I have not fished their whole range of spinnerbaits now in a couple of years, like 2 years. So he might have another option that is more springy.
Yeah, it could be.
And I'm not familiar with it. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, though, Jim and his wife, phenomenal people. Like that whole team. Jim, his wife, and I'm drawing a blank on the other guy's name all of a sudden. They're freaking awesome people. You will see them at the New England's Fishing Expo and at the New Hampshire Outdoor Expo coming up this winter. If you stop by, seriously, you're not going to be you are not going to be sad for stopping by. There's the word I'm looking for. You'll be happy if you stop by. And they're awesome people. And Jim's friggin' phenomenal. He'll talk your ear off. His wife's a sweetheart. Like, I can't say enough good things about them. Ooh, Andrew, Tokyo or Carolina? What's the setup? All right, you first.
So I use my football jig setup. I don't know if you want to do another Alcaprillion, but...
Yeah, I'm doing it.
All right. Let me
Figurative. Oh, my God. Swimbait rod down.
All right. So, yeah, everybody's really going to hate this one, but this is a Megabass Evolution, Destroyer Evolution, Super Diablo Type L. And it is Sean is probably going to have the opposite opinion of this, which is interesting. But this is a medium heavy rod. It's actually a power stronger or a rating stronger than the last one that we showed. So this is a 5.5. So it's a medium heavy, but it has a little bit of a faster action than the Mad Bull that we showed before. And this one, but you can still see it's like 3/4, or it's like a quarter of the way down the rod. So you're still Alcaprillion right here, but you're still getting bend until like right here, until the third or fourth guide. And that I feel like, again, I think that you're going to have a different opinion of this, but when I'm fishing something that's a little bit deeper, like when I fish a Carolina rig, maybe not a Tokyo rig, you can fish those shallow, but when you're fishing a Carolina rig or a football jig and you're fishing a little bit deeper, the way that I look at that is that I'm not getting a lot of like slack line hook sets on that. It's more like I'm trying to keep constant contact with that thing down there, because I'm dragging it and I'm trying to like always feel exactly what it's doing. It's not like you're flipping a jig where it's like your jig is falling and then you're waiting for that like bump and then you're reeling in the slack and jacking them. Yep. It's almost like you're dragging it and you have that constant pressure on it already. And when I'm doing that, for me, I want a rod that has a little bit of bend to it already, because I feel like that gives you a little bit more sensitivity to when you're dragging, rather than if you're using a rod where you want to feel that slack line, like something eat it when it's slack line, because you're not getting that on a Carolina rig or a football jig. Usually it's usually mid drag that you're like dunk, and you want to already have that rod loaded a little bit so you can just get them rather than a slack line type bite. That's my take. But I do feel like yours is probably different because you go heavier on everything.
I do, and I'm using a setup that I currently don't like. But before I get into mine, what is your line? What do you typically use for weight? And more importantly, I'm curious, what do you use for a hook? Your Carolina rig.
So Carolina rig hook, I use a like a worm hook. I don't know what's the name of it. It's like it's not an EWG, but it's an offset worm hook.
Yeah, just your standard offset worm hook. You find those everywhere.
Right. So it's when I'm using a Carolina rig, when you think of an EWG, your line tie is here and your hook point is here and they're even. When you're using a standard offset, your line tie is here and your hook point is here.
Yep.
And I want that on a Carolina rig. I don't want that when I'm flipping or something like that, but I want that on a Carolina rig because I feel like my bait, even though I have constant contact with my bait, I have constant contact with my weight, but my bait is just sitting there on the bottom.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily have constant contact with my bait. And I want my hook point to be a little bit higher than my line tie because I feel like I get better hookup ratio when I do that.
That makes sense.
I'll preface this with I don't throw a Carolina rig every day. I throw it like 5 times a year maybe.
Yep.
But that is what I prefer when I do it. For both a Carolina rig and for a football jig like what I have on there right now. And ironically, that's also the rod that I usually use for spinnerbaits. But I use 14-pound fluorocarbon on that almost exclusively across the board. Mm-hmm. I also never break anything off on that.
Yep.
But
you shouldn't.
That's me.
So your Carolina rig, you go like 14 to 14? You use swivel or?
I go 14. Yeah, so I'll go 14, and then on the weight, on a Carolina rig for weight, I don't really see, like, if I'm going less than like half ounce, I'm not going to Carolina rig. Like I'm going to do something else. There are other things that I like. I don't really like fishing a Carolina rig. Like if I'm going to fish a Carolina rig, it's because I have to fish a Carolina rig. And that's usually like I need at least a half ounce, maybe a 3/4 ounce. And when I do that, I'll go 14. And then depending on what's down there, my standard leader would be 12. But I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. Like it's usually like, because I have 12 in there, like I'll use 12. But if I have 10, like I'll use 10. If I would never go less than 10. But I would say like 12, 14 is probably what my leader is typically.
Yep. So I found over the years, because I'm very fond of it. By the way, David, I saw you jump in there. Any bass addict? Hey, buddy. And you've missed a lot of bougie gear. This guy's right up your alley with all the mega bass stuff. So more often than not, I don't think your leader line diameter matters when it comes to Carolina rigging. There have been some days where I found it did matter. So I don't think it's really different from most other techniques where sometimes, especially bottom dragging like that, for something that tends to be a little bit more finessey, other than, like a full skirted jig, right? It's a big freaking meal most of the time. And you're trying to kind of, there's two different ways to look at Carolina rigging, but more often than not, it doesn't seem to matter. And I'll go to 15-pound for my leader. 12-pound, more often than not, just works. And I rarely have to worry about going heavier. There are some days where I know I'm like in and around a lot of rocks. If I'm up on Champlain with all the zebra mussels, I go 15. And I don't feel that it's hindered my ability yet. And that's when I'm like power fishing through the veggies, because I've found that the freaking zebra mussels get on the damn veggies too.
They're everywhere.
Yep. So, I mean, I still do 12-pound, but I've done 12, I've done 15. I feel like I had better luck with less breakoffs when doing the 15.
Yeah.
So,
good question in here. Leader length.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll touch on that both in a second. So for me, I have two different rods I use. One's a 7.2 medium heavy fast, and I would say it's a pretty true medium heavy. And I will throw that with 30-pound braid, half ounce weight, with a bead underneath it, whether it's a glass bead, plastic bead, like a tungsten clacker. I don't know, take it or leave it. I really don't feel that. I haven't fished with a Carolina rig exclusively enough with and without to say whether or not it makes a difference.
I use a bead too. I don't think it does anything, except for maybe protect or not. But
that's the reason why I throw it. You beat me to the punch. That's the primary reason I throw it, because I do feel like it helps that knot last better.
I just looked at my rod. It's exactly the same as you just said. It's 7.2 medium heavy. It's exactly the same.
Yep, and I like that, and it works. And then I will do typically about an 18-inch leader. 12 pound is usually my go-to. I will sometimes do 15 pound. I would actually say it's probably about 50-50. Again, it depends on where I'm at and what I'm doing. And especially when I'm throwing for a bait behind it. If I'm throwing a ribbon tail worm, I prefer to go 12 pound. And there's no science to it. It's just for some, like, I throw a ribbon tail worm on 12 pound straight fluoro when I'm just doing that out deep in the grass for summertime largemouth. So I do the same thing with Carolina rigs. That's where my confidence is at. One thing I really like doing a lot lately, I will throw a 3/0 flipping hook with a rage craw, or the flipping delight from Beast Coast.
Flipping hook like
a proper flipping and pitching hook.
Like the big bait guard.
And my baits last longer. My hookup ratio is phenomenal, and I get it through the weeds, and the bait doesn't fall off at all.
Yeah, but you also have to consider how you set the hook.
Damn right.
The average person would probably hook like 30% of the fish with that hook on there. It's because you're setting the hook like you're gonna die if you don't get the hook into that fish.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Half ounce more often than not. I do like a 3/4 ounce too. It's all dependent. There's some areas that I fished up north where some really good deep veggies where, like I'm looking at Joe Burchill was just talking about. He's got a 3/4 ounce weight, 17 pound of Brazix, 12 pound of Brazix. 3 to 4/0 extra wide gap. That was what I almost always did. 3/0 or 4/0 EWG hook. And then I found I liked like a slightly thinner gauge 3/0 flipping and pitching hook a little bit better because the baits last longer and my hookup ratio was like phenomenal, pretty much 100%.
I would just
switching to that.
I would lose fish with an EWG. There's just like I feel like
stop setting the hook like a pansy.
It could be that. It could be that. Maybe that's the answer to all my problems.
You gotta jack them up. I do like a 3/4 ounce. Like if I'm fishing, I don't know, 15 plus feet, and I'm in some thick veggies, I like going 3/4 ounce. And at that point, I'm like powering it through. Like I'll throw it out fairly far. I'm not going to go for a 200-foot cast. I'll probably go 100 feet, and I'll try and let it slide down a little bit. And when I feel it's close to the bottom, I'll almost swim it through with that Carolina rig. And if I feel like I've got a spot where I've kind of found a little bit of a clearing in it, then I'll kill it. I'll pause it, and I'll kind of twitch along the bottom. I'll go back to like kind of powering it through. I'm almost power dragging it through all that, and it's almost at that point kind of fishing like a Texas rig, but that 3/4 ounce weight really helps push through and drive through all of that. It's gonna crash to the bottom a lot more easily, and then that bait's just kind of hang behind it. There's like so many different ways you can fish it. We could talk about that for its own topic one night. Might not be a bad idea, actually, because it's such a killer technique.
Yeah. Well, it's the most boring technique, but it does catch a lot of fish.
Dude, with where you fish on Champlain,
I know.
We need to talk offline.
I've done it. I've done it.
Power fish it. You're more of a crankbait guy, so I get it.
Yeah, this is not. It's still not as fun as fishing a deep crankbait.
That's true.
You have like 20 really good questions in here about sea
I'm
rigs.
so far away. So, all right, let's rip through a bunch of these so I can get caught up. So, Jeremy Martin, do you find yourself getting tie-wrapped light braid? I'm struggling with 10-pound braid being too limp and wrapping. It happens all the time. It's part of the game. You got to deal with it. It pisses me off every time, but it is what it is. Joe, braid back your casting reels? Yes, if you have really, really good line capacity on it. Wholeheartedly agree. Regardless of whether you go straight braid or you go straight fluoro, you go backing of braid to fluoro, I always put a teeny tiny little strip of electrical tape or even Scotch tape over the knot, my initial tie, to prevent any slipping, which is a big problem when you fish really late into the year, really cold weather like myself and plenty of other people. So keep that in mind. Going back through. There you go, Mark. Then the Berkeley spooling station does make filling your lines up easier. Okay, good to know.
Oh, you're so far behind.
I am, dude. I'm so far.
I'm like an hour ahead of you on this one.
Oh, so this is great. Some people suggest leaving your spools in a bucket of water helps a lot. I've tried it personally. So whether you're talking about using it to like spool your rod or just like leaving them like that to keep the memory down, I'm not sure. But Joe, if it's boring, you're doing it wrong.
You're probably right.
I know, like Andrew, when we're out on the boat and he needs to re-spool something, bring it down through his guides, tie it to the reel, and he just literally hucks the spool into the lake. And then that's how he spools his rod. He does it every
Really?
time. Oh, yeah.
How do
Every
you get
time.
the spool back?
Well, because it, like, there's enough tension on it that the spool eventually will be within, like, a couple of inches of the rod tip. So it's right next to the boat. So he just reaches down and picks it up.
It seems dangerous.
That's fine.
There's another spinnerbait comment. Spinnerbait.
Everybody loves the spinnerbait. It's so good. Tom, guess we need to fish better spots then. I appreciate it, guys. Keep you posted. Good.
That's the guy that asked about his kids.
Yes. And then I'm going to what medium should I be looking at? Slower? No. If you're going single hook point applications, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a different opinion. Single hook point applications, jig, spinnerbait, chatterbait, like whatever, anything along that. I feel you want a fast or extra fast action. Like you want to take up that hook a lot faster. You can play around with the power a little bit, or you could go the other way. Like I feel like you need to have one or the other, but I find that with my jigs especially, I want a fast or extra fast hook set or action on the rod tip. Extra fast is kind of stiff. It's like if you're fishing something heavier, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, doesn't seem to matter too much. If you're fishing 3/8 ounce a lot, then extra fast might be like overkill. But like I want something fast. So when I set the hook, like the moment I start bringing that rod up, it's taking up slack. Any last slack that I couldn't reel up on my own. Different opinion?
I largely agree. I don't know. I think it does depend on if it's single hook or treble hook, but I also think it really depends on if the bait is something that is sitting on the bottom and you're slowly moving, or if it's something that you're consistently moving. Like think of a chatterbait, it's a single hook, but you're moving it constantly, and that's something where there's not a lot of give in the chatterbait, and you expect that when a fish eats a chatterbait, it's overtaking the chatterbait. It has to swim fast to get the chatterbait, and that's something where you want to have a little more give in your rod. But I would say, in general, if it's a single hook bait and you're fishing it slow and you're not constantly reeling it, it's not a moving bait, then you want a faster action rod. You'll get better slack line sensitivity to feel if something picks it up while it's not moving, while you don't have direct contact with it, and that'll give you much more success. If it's something that you're constantly reeling and it's a moving bait and it has treble hooks or something like a chatterbait, then in my opinion, you want something that's a little bit slower action. You want something that's more moderate action, and it kind of accounts for the fish overtaking the bait, and it makes it harder for you to just yank the fish yank the bait right out of the fish's mouth before it can really get a chance to get the hooks.
Yep. That's my dedicated jerkbait rod is a medium, moderate, fast.
It's perfect.
And I'm tempted to go to a medium, moderate, but I don't think I need to.
I don't think you need to. Because if you go medium, moderate, you're going to tear your elbow up trying to actually jerk it.
No, you're not wrong there. Yeah, no, it's fine. I have a 7-foot medium, moderate, fast from Lose that I will eventually replace. There's another rod that Douglas has in their X Matrix series, which I would prefer to have for this because it's a little bit smidge lighter than the LRSs. And for something like when you're constantly working a jerkbait, I really feel like you want the lightest rod possible because you do that for 8 hours, dude, it's exhausting.
Yeah, jerkbait and drop shot, I feel like are my two things where it's like I want if I'm gonna spend a ton of money and like get the absolute best lightest thing that you can possibly get, like jerkbait where all your bites are when you're not in contact with it.
Yep.
And it's something that you're constantly moving, or a drop shot where you're potentially fishing in 60 feet of water or something, and you need to really
feel that.
You need to have as much sensitivity as you possibly can. Yep.
Which it's funny because like I love fishing everything. There isn't a single technique out there that I don't like fishing at this point. The one caveat to that, I could use a little bit more work with a hair jig. But that's pretty much it. Everything else, pure traditional, big swim baits, doesn't matter. Like there isn't a single thing that I don't feel like 100% confident in. And I particularly love drop shot fishing when we're talking about like much more finessey kind of techniques. So I've always spent a lot of money on my drop shot setups because I figured at one point, to what you just said, like if you got your go-tos and things that are like kind of really critical, if you've got the money to splurge, jig, drop shot, jerkbait, like those are the three things to first splurge on, especially bottom contact stuff. the Douglas X Matrix rod that I have right now, I'm using as a drop shot rod occasionally, but also for Ned rig, and it's insane. I love it. I like it better than anything I've ever got from Lew's, but it is a foam grip. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not my first choice. They have a carbon fiber grip on a 710 medium fast rod, and I'm like,
That's tempting.
it's really tempting.
to try
It's
it.
so tempting.
That sounds like a good like topwater rod too.
That'd be a light topwater, dude. It's a noodle. Like it's a wet noodle.
What is it? It's a medium.
I think it's a medium fast.
I would use that for topwater.
But
I mean, you're not going to
it's
use it for a weight.
710, so like a lot of that power is dispersed quite a bit.
Yeah, but you want that.
Yeah, no, true.
Depends on how big the hooks are on your topwater, I guess. But
You know what? That'd be killer for a really small popper.
that's what I'm saying. Like that's like my DFS thing for a popper. That's the best. You get like a little popper out there and like doop, and then something sucks it up, and you get a big 710 rod.
All right, I'm buying that
bending all
rod.
the way down on it. Yeah.
I'm like, the other thing about it too is like, again, it's a full carbon grip.
Yeah,
So
cool.
between the quality of that blank, the quality of the guides, you go straight braid on it, which is probably overkill for something like that. But like now you're really amping up on the sensitivity on it, and then a straight, pure, 100% carbon friggin' handle on it and reel seat. That's like, you would be able to feel a goby just kind of go
You
on
feel
it
a Gobi
at
fart
100
on it
feet.
from what you said.
I want it.
You're an hour behind on these comments.
No, I got caught up.
How'd you get cut off?
Well, I went through and I didn't really like. I saw comments, but I didn't see questions.
Sounds like you ignored them.
They're comments. I mean, I could go back through, but I caught all the way up to the front to make sure I didn't miss any questions. I did see from MD, so hard to find any rods that aren't fast action with a budget in mind.
I got one for you.
Check out Douglas. If you want the LRS series, if you want something on the cheaper side, and that's in like the 150-ish, 180-ish range. So a little pricey, but they're phenomenal rods. They're blue, so if that's not your thing, unfortunately, that's the only option you get. But you were about to say another option.
I don't know if they even still make this, but a long time ago, in a different past life, when I was on the Lew's pro staff, they made a rod that was called the David Fritz Crankbait Special Speed Stick.
They still have that David Fritz series.
It was so light. Like it was like $70. And it was so light. And for years, it was my absolute favorite, like crankbait rod. I would use it for like smaller chatterbaits. I would use it for some jerk baits. But it was $70. It would bend halfway through. It was very, very sensitive because it was so light. But it was moderate action, and it was the best. It was my favorite rod that I had for many, many years until I started like really investing into equipment and stuff like that. But like that is a rod that I feel like if I had to just get any rod like that, that rod could do the job of many of the really expensive rods that I have. Like it's not as fancy, but like it could get it done.
Nice. So the jerkbait rod that I have now is a Team Lew's Custom Pro Speed Stick, which I think they're actually discontinuing that series. They have discontinued that series. It was not at ICAST. They had new Elite rods though, which I thought was a carbon fiber grip.
Yeah,
it's a wind grip that is meant to look like carbon fiber.
I don't like those. They're like it's like the rubber, like the wind grip. Like, I don't like those.
I go back and forth on it. Like it's nice, but it's like now it seems kind of chintzy because like everybody has wind grip.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like cheapened it.
I don't know.
I'd rather have straight cork. Carbon fiber or cork.
I'd rather have straight cork too.
Yeah,
Like,
cork is my first preference. Carbon fiber is my first preference. Cork is my second preference.
Yeah.
Some people are like, but it gets slippery when it's wet. I'm like, it's not a big deal. It's more comfortable.
it doesn't get that slippery.
No.
And the wind grip is weird. Like it's sticky. I don't know.
Dude, especially when you're hot and you start
too
sweating.
tacky.
It's like,
yeah. It's not my
But
favorite.
so it's a Team Lew's Custom Pro Speed Stick. It's a 7-foot medium, moderate, fast, but it fishes more like a 610, which is what I was trying to find. But it's a full cork grip and it's a longer butt grip than anything else. And I'm still pretty sure that it's still from the butt to the tip. That's at 7-foot length. But that reel seat is a little bit further up than any of the rods, and then that rest, that makes the butt grip a little bit better, which is nice because when I
You
lean,
got a lot more leverage.
yeah, I've got the whole thing braced against my entire forearm, which is nice for me with my longer arms and everything. So like, it's just perfect. And then like I'm not always slapping this freaking surface of the water. I'm just trying to twitch and keep it low.
Yeah.
I love that rod, and it's awesome when it loads up. Semi-taut line. Every time I get bit, I can just see like the first 2 to 3 guides go. It's like, yeah, dude. With the way you fish a jerkbait, the moment you get active target on your boat, you're gonna lose your mind. I have been fishing a jerkbait more now than I ever have in my life before. One, because I'm confident as hell with it anyway,
yeah.
But two, because holy shit, as soon as you start getting a jerkbait, even right now, over their head, and you can like see the way they're reacting to it, and like it's instantaneous. Like know they're gonna eat it. There's no doubt about that, and the areas are likely gonna eat it. But then when you like, I've been picking apart unique offshore vegetation, just very subtly different. And that's where like a lot more fishermen loaded up.
Yep.
True roamers.
Yep.
And then deeper rock piles. And I'll throw like everything else at them first, and depending upon how they react, that's when the jerkbait comes out. And I can see exactly where they are, get 30 feet past them. By the time I get to them, the jerkbait is either at eye level or just over their head. And right off the bat, you can tell if you got the right color or not. Because they'll either smoke it or we will run from it. They ran from it. Okay, well, I know what's in this pond. I have yellow perch tied on. Let me try this. It's a little bit more like minnowy. Tie that on. And that same exact fish that just ran from it, just goes and smokes it. It's like,
I like that. I like that a lot.
You already know what to do, but now you get to see it happening in real time. So it's the expediting of that breaking down.
Yeah, you don't have to go through the trial and error as much. So let me ask you this. I was thinking about this actually on the drive over here. In my opinion, if you have, and I could be absolutely crazy in thinking this, but I swear that if you have the right jerkbait rod and you have the setup that is designed specifically for a jerkbait that you're using, and it's as sensitive as it can be, that you can feel a fish push a jerkbait, push the water around a jerkbait before they bite it. Do you see that on active target? Like, I swear that when I'm fishing a jerkbait, it'll be like, I'm going to get a bite on my next jerk. And then it's like, oh, there it is. Because you can feel the fish swim up and stop, and you feel almost like
that water.
Yeah, you feel almost that change in, like, water pressure where it's like either you get more water pressure or it's like there's no water pressure because it moved it, and now, like, the pressure, you almost have, like, a vacuum, and it's like there's nothing, and then the next jerk, it's like, oh, there's a fish on it.
Yep, 100%.
I swear that you can feel that with a rod, that, like, like, a bite's coming right now.
Yep, 100%. And we've been seeing that with active target. It's cool shit. What my favorite thing so far has been with the active target is targeting fish deeper offshore with a drop shot. And every time it's a smallmouth,
Watch them go down.
So every time it's a smallmouth, chalk it up, it comes down, and you've got the right bait when it gets bit on the fall, which is nothing new. That happens to both of us plenty of times. Yeah. But to see them come up and smoke it, like how many times you got bit on the fall and you're like, why can't I feel my bait?
Yeah.
What the hell happened?
Yeah.
You start reeling into it,
feet of water?
and it's like I can't feel anything. And the next thing you know, it's just loading up. The faster you reel, like, oh shit, he did hit it.
Yeah.
Totally different when that exact situation happens. But I watched him bite it on active target. Cool. I throw it, he comes from 16 feet up to 3 feet. Like that thing barely got on the surface. Cool. He smokes it. And I watched it. It happened 3 times so far. He came up, hit it within 3 to 5 feet below the surface, and only came down 2 feet, 3 feet maybe below that. And then just sat there, and I'm like, am I still falling? What the hell? And I go to reel, and the moment I feel the tension, I can see him start to swim off. I'm like, oh my God, he had it the whole time.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so much fun. Yeah.
I might get it just for that. I feel like we talked about this like one of the times that I was on the show before, that like the way that I fish a drop shot is I almost like pitch it. Like I never drag a drop shot. It's always like I let it fall to the bottom. I hop it like 2 or 3 times. And if I don't get bit, I'm like, this is the highest percentage time is when it's falling in the first 3 hops. If it's not there, I reel it in and I do it again. And it's just that over and over again whenever I'm fishing a drop shot.
Yep. Kevin, to answer your question, it's Jonah from Mast Landing Brewing Company, which is phenomenal. I was on keto for the last 3 weeks, and then with work travel, it was incredibly difficult to deal with. So I had a pizza tonight, followed by beer. That's my first beer I've had in like over a month. It's gonna hurt tomorrow, and I'll restart keto tomorrow because I was down 8 pounds in the 3 weeks I did. So I'll go back to it. But it's one thing that sucks about keto. If you don't have like somewhere like proper to stay, like if your schedule's made up for you, it is really, really difficult. And in all fairness, I could have really stuck to it, but I mean, dude, if you're gonna go out to like a really nice steakhouse, which I told you about, and they've got like,
How do you do it?
You can't.
You can't do it.
You can't. You're surrounded by a group of awesome people, and you're all having a fantastic time, and they bring out these delicious, garlicky, buttery bread rolls. Of course I'm going to eat that.
You can't. Yeah. What are you going to do?
And then, the invitation, like, can you do sushi? No, but yes. Yeah, I don't even care. Yes, we're going for sushi. I'll totally eat all the carbs for my sushi. Oh my God, dude, it was heavenly. It was like thin sliced sirloin wrapped around rice with lobster in the middle.
Oh my God.
With a paper thin slice of jalapeno on top and this creamy mayo. Oh my God.
Oh.
That was one. And the other one was spicy crab meat with avocado, mango, a little bit of eel sauce. And then there was like this like orangey kind of mango like aioli with honey drizzled through it at the same time.
Oh.
Dude.
Oh.
I was in heaven.
Did you have to eat it on the toilet?
No, that's the thing I like about sushi. It doesn't upset me whatsoever.
Oh, that's good.
They also had these Korean barbecue, like Korean buffalo chicken wings. Oh my God,
so good.
Cooked to perfection. It was great. 8 pounds, so all I sacrificed for 2 dumps.
Hurtful, very hurtful.
Not wrong in the past though. Scott, don't laugh. I just bought an ugly stick, carbon medium fast, totally different than their elite medium fast, lighter yet a little stiffer. I'm not gonna laugh, man. If it works for you, who gives a crap? Doesn't matter. Oh,
Food poisoning is a good diet.
lost 10 pounds from food poisoning in 2 days. The trick is to maintain it afterwards. So, funny story about that. I had to go for a colonoscopy, which I told you guys about when it happened a couple months ago. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I lost 10 pounds in like 24 hours. And I felt amazing after, though. I tell you what, like all the bloat and everything was gone. And I did not maintain it afterwards, though. I went right back to drinking beer and a bunch of crap food.
It goes away quick.
Yeah.
I want to cover another rod.
Go for it.
So, but you have to do my Vanna White.
Okay, I'm doing it.
All right. So, we here talk a lot of crap about fishing a Senko and things like that. But I do think that at the end of the day, there are times where everybody has to fish a Senko. And this is a Megabass.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This is a Megabass Destroyer P5 Windbuster, and this is a spinning rod, but it's essentially a cross between, it's like somewhere between a medium and a medium heavy, but it's fast, and you can see that it's fast on the tip. And if you're throwing a Senko or something like a free rig, or you're fishing, like we talked earlier before about throwing a 1/4 ounce open water sniper, like any of those things on this, like this rod, I think this is the single most sensitive rod that I've ever thrown of any rod that I've ever used, spinning or casting. I think this, if I had to pick one rod that was the most sensitive rod that I've ever used, it's this rod. And I'm telling you, you can have 5 feet of slack in your line and throw this rod, and you will feel a bite on this rod. So I highly, highly recommend this if you're throwing Senkos, if you're throwing free rigs, if you're throwing
I'm going to
jigs
show
on
him.
a
I got to
spinning
go get
rod.
it. I can't. I broke my leader off and I didn't retie it.
That's sad.
Damn it! It was my Douglas rod, so it was very, very, very similar to that. And I completely agree with him. Oh, dude, I'm so sorry. You asked about. Oh, okay. Well, first let's talk about that before we change topic. Price range.
So that rod is $500, but
So worth it.
it's $500. But
If you're single.
I'm telling you, like, yes, it's expensive. It's not something that you're gonna, it's an investment, but they have a good warranty. And I'm telling you, when you have one of those rods that's of that sensitivity, it changes how you feel when you're fishing it. Like it's more fun to use something like that because of the sensitivity. You can feel things. I promise you, like you can feel things that you could not feel with rods that are not as sensitive of that, and it kind of changes. it kind of changes like your perception of when you're out there of that. Like honestly, like I don't know how to describe it, but like you feel things that you could not feel before. It's hard to describe. It's hard to say that it's worth it, but it gives you a different experience when you're out there. Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, the new baby's just going to be in newspapers.
Sorry, honey. I know we're supposed to get you real diapers, but Daddy needs new Mega Bass.
Daddy needs new Mega Bass rods. The baby's going all natural.
Favorite frog setup? That's you first again. I'll let you go. I'm not a big frog guy anymore.
I'm not a huge frog guy. So my best frog fish, I caught a 6-pound frog bass on Beaver Lake in Derry, New Hampshire, like the most crowded, full of jet skis, full of like that lake gets the more pressure than I feel like any place in the world. And I caught a 6-pounder on a frog there like 3 years ago, and it was like this is the peak of my frog career. And then ever since then, it was like I'm never gonna top it. So like, but when I do throw a frog, I use all Mega Bass. So I throw it on a Levante perfect pitch. I use 50-pound braid. I know a lot of people use 65-pound braid.
That's all you need.
I use 50-pound braid. I've never broken 50-pound braid, and I feel like you can cast further. It's a little bit more sensitive. You can get a little bit more line on your reels. It's like easier to manage. I feel like it's more limp.
Yep.
So I use 50-pound braid, but 50 or 65-pound I'm sure is fine.
I have 50-pound braid from Defiant. They're soft casting currently on my frog rod. It's a 7.6 heavy fast from Lew's. It's another one of their Team Lew's Custom Pro Speed Stick rods, which are discontinued. It's a little stiff, I will admit. And I'm still using my Corrado HG or GH. It's a fairly older Corrado. It's a 7.5 to 1, which I remember a video. Like I bought this well before that, but like I like that. I like it. It's the perfect balance between you get high speed for taking up slack, but you still have torque out of it. So I don't like a super high speed like I would for a jig, because you do have to reel them up out of that slop. Whereas a jig, I'm typically fishing open water. I'm not like in the thickest of stuff like I would for a frog. So I like it for that. And I throw it on 50 pound. I used to be like a 80, 85 pound guy. Like everyone says you have to for a frog. No. And honestly, even 30 pound could probably do it for you.
Yes.
50 pounds is probably a little bit better, but you could to prove a point. I did have 30 pound on that reel, that Corrado, and 2 years ago, not this last summer, but the summer before, Andrew and I went up. Almost 2 years ago to the date. We went up to Champlain, and we were punching grass mats for the second. We killed them on Carolina rigs, caught a bunch of beautiful smallmouth until noon, and we started fishing at like 6:30 in the morning. So we already had a good day of the water. And then we went from 1 to 7:30 punching mats. And I had one of my Swimbait rods, that 1/2 ounce to 3 ounce, 8-foot rod with a Lew's Super Duty 300, 7.5 to 1, with 70-pound braid, 2-ounce tungsten. It was like cheating. Like I could just overpower those fish. I get a great hook set on every single one, and I just yank them out. It was just dumb. And I had way too much fun. And Andrew was fishing a 1 to 4 ounce rod, 2-ounce weight, and I gave him. He didn't have one with braid, so I gave him my Corrado, which had 30 pounds. Mm-hmm. Didn't break off a single fish, didn't miss a single fish, and we were punching.
Way more sensitive too.
Oh yeah. Well, it would make more sense because he kicked the shit out of me that day too. We had a good day, but he beat the piss out of me, and like literally almost the exact same setup, but a heavier rod with lighter braid and same gear ratio. But dude, he wailed on him, and I don't even think he retied.
Good for him.
And he didn't break off a single fish, like didn't lose anything. Every once in a while we'd lose like 1 or 2, but we're talking like grass mats that a 2-ounce tungsten weight couldn't punch through because it's so thick and dense. And 30-pound braid was just fine. I think people overemphasize braid weight when it comes to frog fishing.
Yes, I've never broken 10-pound braid. Never once in my life have I broken 10-pound braid, let alone 50-pound braid.
Right.
Like, I'll tow my car with 50-pound braid.
See, Jeremy, perfect. I broke the rod before I broke 50-pound braid. Yeah. Ooh, favorite frog. The gavacho for myself, which I think is jackal.
Jackal Gavacho, so good.
It's
so good.
It walks and it pops.
It's so good.
You can't go wrong.
I would say Jackal Gavacho is my second favorite frog. My first favorite frog is the Jackal Kiara.
Ooh.
And that is the one that's a little tiny bit smaller than the Gavacho.
Yep.
Favorite color is straight black. And it's just, there's something about the Kiara, like in that smaller size, that I feel like with a frog, like I fished a lot in Florida and I fished a lot in Virginia, which I know is weird, but I used to go to Smith Mountain Lake every year.
I remember
and
you telling me about
that. Like I used to go to spend like time on Okeechobee and things like that. And like when you're down in Florida in those areas, like the really big frogs, I feel like get bit better. And I feel like up here you get bites on bigger frogs, but up here I also feel like there's something about like the size of the bait fish that we have up here. They just don't grow quite as big, and like I feel like I just do better on like a smaller frog. I don't know why, but like a smaller frog I've always done better on up here.
It's more in line with, like you just said, the average size of our forage base.
Right. So what are you throwing the KR on? I'm same thing. It's this. I'm throwing it on a perfect pitch, 50-pound braid, on a perfect pitch Levante with I have a Shimano Corrado MGL 200, I think, on that rod. And it's fine. It may be a little tiny bit overpowered for a Kiara, but that's the rod that I use for Kiara or a Gavacho or basically any frog. Like that's my frog rod. It's my flipping and pitching rod, and it's also my frog rod. But Kiara is probably the smallest thing I would throw on it, but you're still throwing it in the same super heavy areas.
Yeah.
And like it's worth it to have the extra oomph on the rod just in case.
Oh yeah. 100%. For me, for my favorite color, I don't remember what color it is from Jackal and the Gavacho, but it looks like a bluegill. Like, I don't know what it is about that color and me, other than the fact that bluegill are freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's been my most productive color. Second to that, probably something much more natural, like a very natural frog color, kind of yellow belly, like a bright but subtly bright yellow belly.
Do you mean the gill color that's like it's like
it literally
silver,
looks like
it's like silver and it has like speckle and some.
I'm gonna look it up. Jackal. Nope. Vacho.
There you go.
And it's literally right there. Nope, not that one.
That's the one I'm talking about.
It was
Black gill.
Gold gill.
Okay. Yeah, I have that.
Gold gill.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that color.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it looks like a bluegill.
Yeah, it works killer.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if I could see the belly.
But if you think about a frog and any topwater, really, the only thing that it's one of those things where I feel like it's almost like a gimmick. Like topwaters are like topwater color. I feel like is gimmicky because like
just need white or black,
right? And like the fit, like
MD right there, you just said it.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter what's on really, unless it's going under the subsurface. But like it doesn't really matter what's on the top half of the bait. The fish aren't seeing it; they're seeing what's on the bottom. And like the belly of the bait is almost always white, unless you're using straight black, and then it's black. And it's like, okay, so like I have all these cool things on the top, but it's like, what it's seeing is white.
Right, white, yellow, black. I really feel like those are the only colors you would really ever need to get away with. Maybe a green pumpkin if you wanted to get a little extra fancy, but you're absolutely right. That's all they see. Right. I do feel like that gill color works for me really well because of the way that I typically fish it, where I tend to walk it a lot more aggressively and I pop it a lot more aggressively, that I tend to get it slightly down a little bit. Yeah. So I do think they're starting to see the sides a little bit more.
That's fair.
But that's literally just me and the one type of way I like to fish it the most.
Yeah, that's fair.
Other than that, though, yeah, like a really natural frog color, something tends to be a brighter bottom. Like I said, it's a bright but subtly bright. It's not like a nuclear freaking highlighter yellow.
Yeah.
It's just a bright yellow, but it's like dull. It's matte.
When I throw a frog, like maybe they think it's a frog. My biggest thing when I'm throwing a frog is like I think that it's just that fish is in an area where it probably doesn't see a lot of anything. And I'm just throwing something that's there, and it's just something, and it says, what is this something that's here now? And like the reason that I like black is that it's a contrast against anything. It could be night, it could be the middle of the day, it could be cloudy, windy, sunny. Black is a contrasting color. It's going to be darker than anything around it. It'll definitely see it no matter what. it'll see the outline, and it's like it's just a something that's in its area.
Right.
And if it's in an area that it never sees anything, it's going to say, hey, what's this something that's here?
I see something.
Right.
And then you twitch. It's like, oh my God, it's getting away. I got to eat.
Yeah.
Reaction bites will happen no matter the color also. Yeah, it's spot on. Especially on top water. Dude, I tell you what, we've been at this for over 2 hours now. I think it's a good time to call it quits. Plus, more than half of our chat has dropped out. And usually that happens right about 9:45. Everybody's like, okay, bedtime. Yeah. This was awesome. Like we were talking about it before Dennis got here. And it was like, I was like, there's two ways you can handle this. We can either drive it or we can let the chat drive it. And I honestly prefer it when you guys drive it, because I feel like I guess just overall flow of the conversation, the engagement that we have is a lot better. Not that I mind driving a lot of the times. You guys know me. I won't shut up. I can talk for 2 hours nonstop. That's not an issue.
It's unfortunate.
But I like it better when you guys just throw us a lot more specific questions. So that's good. But I tell you what, if there's anything we didn't cover that somebody wants for us to elaborate on, or at least myself, because it'll be in the chat, like leave it in the comments.
What about a BFS show in the future?
Yes. I would 100% be down for that.
We were going to talk about BFS today, but we ran out of it. I brought a BFS rod with me, but that's probably worth an entire show for BFS.
I bet you I could get somebody else on the show to join us for that. So it'd primarily be just like me facilitating questions to you and someone else.
Let's do it.
Because that would be a learning experience for me, because I've never done it.
Let's do it.
So that'd be good. All right, we're going to plan on that. I can tell you right now, if anybody didn't see the stories I posted on Instagram, ICAST was friggin' amazing. There was two pros that I got to talk with. I talked with a lot of them, and it was awesome. There's two very specifically I wanted to meet for a number of personal reasons. And while I was at it, I threw it out there, like, would you guys like to come on the show? And I explained really what we do and what the intent behind it is, and just briefly like what I was expecting to kind of go over with having both of these on. One gentleman, from a very personal standpoint, I wanted him on because of how he just indirectly helped me with my own like battles with depression. So, and he, you know, like I just was beyond excited to meet him, and it was awesome. And it was like, I don't know how else to explain it. It was just awesome. And it meant a lot to me to be able to sit and talk with him for a few minutes. And I threw it out there, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that specifically. So like, I was like emotionally moved after being able to talk with him and just say thank you for everything. And now that he's going to come on the show, as long as we can work schedules out, is awesome. And another guy that I've looked up to for a number of reasons, from like the fishing aspect, and just a fucking good dude. And I again explained it, you know, what we're doing. And like, I was like, I don't want to bring you on just to ask you 1,000 same canned questions you've always had. Like, I want to talk about this a little bit more specifically, and then we just kind of let it go from there, man. Like, just free flow it a little bit. And he said yes, too. So just going to work out those schedules. I'm really, really excited to have those guys on. This is like literally dreams come true kind of things for me right now. Other than that, I don't know. I know I've got Sean Graves, who's on the NHIAA, to come on and talk about high school fishing. So anybody watching this now or watching this in the future, when it's up on YouTube, if you know any current or aspiring high school anglers, when we have Sean on the next week or two, like, that's going to be a phenomenal show to have on, because there is no better resource to hear from when it comes to high school bass fishing and everything that entails. Yeah, totally realized we didn't even get to that. Well, so should we do that next?
No, what I was thinking, can we do a giveaway and we'll pick randomly a person that shares the video for this?
Yeah, now you're talking. For what? So, for next week?
So maybe, well, I think maybe we say it here, and then maybe you can post something or say like, whoever shares this video, if it's 20 people that share it, we're going to randomly pick one of the 20 people. We're going to mail this to them.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I like it. So I will put that when I post next week's show, or whatever show it is.
It's up to you.
I'll tag that in it, so that way it hits more people, in the sense that, like, because, you know, there's only 23 people left here. So I feel bad for anybody that jumped out. So I want to give those guys an opportunity. But be some sweet little crankbait action there to give away. And one of the things I didn't get to do tonight was I had a couple of old lose rods I was going to give away too. Well, I'll work that out for another trip, another show. But other than that, we'll definitely be back next week. I have a normal week. The week after is the first day I go up to Lake Champlain to start scouting for the MLF Phoenix BFL that I'm fishing as a boater on Saturday, July 29th. But I'll be able to stream from Lake Champlain. So from here on out, I think we're on a regular schedule, back to Wednesdays at 8 p.m. and it should be good. Dude, MD, Swimbait Scrutiny, I've been trying to get them to come back on, and it's been very difficult for all of us to align our schedules. So hopefully that happens sooner than later. It's supposed to happen in the spring. One of the guys, he couldn't work it out with his schedule, so I'll reach back out to them and see what's a good time. One of the other guys ended up moving too, and he had a ton of projects to do with the new house. They're just life stuff. So we'll work that out, because those guys are fucking awesome, and I want to bring them back on. Other than that, I'm tired, and I've done a lot of talking for the last few days.
Close it out.
We're done.
Wrap it up.
It's over. Thank you all for watching. Greatly appreciated as always. Again, we're here every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/@Reel Nothern Bass or /603 Bass. Doesn't matter. You get here. Anybody watching on Spotify, we appreciate you guys as well. Thank you all for watching tonight. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next week.